other examples of what's sitting under fruitless and wasteful expenditure. For health, we've seen interest and penalties, which also we've seen it at sports and some instances at the transport. For DID, we've seen the litigations and claims that were basically settled late. We've seen double payments made to NPOs at social development. For sports also, we've seen some expenditure being incurred for events that were subsequently cancelled. Payments for goods that were never received at agriculture, and the other one, it's at the Office of the Premier. There was that just incident in terms of overpayment of some of the beneficiaries. I think it's life asset remaining beneficiaries where there was overpayment to some of those. Yeah, those are the examples, Chair, of what constitute the fruitless and wasteful expenditure incurred. Then, Chair, on the reduction of irregular expenditure, I did say we'll provide the context as well. So, Chair, the National Treasury actually released the framework, practice note 4 of 2022-23, at the beginning of 2023. And these auditees have since been implementing. So in implementing that particular practice note, Chair, there's basically trying to search for the right word. The auditees basically given opportunity where there's a disagreement with the auditor on the non-compliance, or if it's not on the non-compliance, maybe on the quantification of irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. So that particular framework, it says in such instances, the irregular expenditure on that particular non-compliance will not be disclosed in the financial statements. However, it will be put under assessment for Treasury to confirm it. So they've got 3 months as at year end for Treasury to do an assessment. And once Treasury confirms, that's the only time then they will bring it in the financial statements. So we've seen a surge in terms of the auditees that followed that route in terms of disagreeing with the non-compliance and pushing the instances or the cases to the Provincial Treasury to do an assessment of those. Then what we wanted to say is, if this were already confirmed as at year end, the irregular expenditure incurred would have been more than what we are reflecting here, Chair. So with those, we just highlighted the biggest ones that have basically opted to lodge the cases with the Provincial Treasury. The biggest one being health at 4.8 billion, education 1.5 billion, human settlement 223 million, and social development 79 million. I think there's few more, but these are the top ones that contribute to that. So when you look at the top 4 only, you can already see, Chair, that actually if a Treasury was done with assessment at year end, this could have been contributed to the large increase in the in the irregular expenditure incurred. So that's the context that Chair wanted to provide to the committee in terms of interpreting the slight decline. All right, Chair. The next one is basically just further analysis of the root causes. So in terms of the procurement or SCM and other non-compliance that give rise to irregular expenditure in this case, we've broken it down in terms of the auditees and the findings that resulted in that. The main one or the biggest one was basically 10 auditees, which basically had on the SCM the procurement process that was not followed. The second one, which is non-auditors, it's basically still on SCM, where the bidding process or quotations also were not obtained, or the bidding process was not actually compliant in terms of the prescript. And the third one, which is true auditors, it's on the contract management. And the last one, which is other, it speaks to employees, employee cost-related non-compliance, which resulted in irregular expenditure. So that's basically the findings that make up the irregular expenditure in the current year. Then, Chair, in terms of the root causes, I would have indicated that we see the controls that are in place, but when it comes to then implementation thereof, they are not consistently implemented. For instance, the province has introduced the checklist. I think the Treasury has assisted in terms of streamlining it to make sure that it's complete. It covers the important things as well. But those checklists are not consistently implemented, which then take us back in terms of having the issues of non-compliance. The other part, Chair, is where we've seen some departments are not adequately assessing the procurement needs, and that results in procurement being done without following the SEM process, where, for instance, talk to the issues of consignment stock at health. It's always coming up, where they just procure without actually following the procurement processes. The other one is security services at schools from a Department of Education, which they just procure, but they don't follow the procurement process. So those are the examples where we're saying the procurement needs are not, the planning around that is not being done adequately. And it then results in the pillars of procurement being breached, which talk to fairness, equitable competitiveness, and cost effectiveness. The other one is capacitation, Chair, around BEC and BAC for some of the departments, as we have observed the deficiencies in those. And ineffective contract management, I spoke to that, Chair, to say some auditors still have issues with the contracts that expires without the department having concluded the replacement contract. As such, those contracts result in month-to-month extension, which results in irregular expenditure. Then probity audits, I think we've also spoke to this one a lot in the past, Chair, where we also indicated, and I think we agree with the Provincial Treasury on this one, on property audits, to say for complex procurement and significant values, because of the tediousness of the process, it's susceptible to errors. Therefore, property audits will be key to make sure that it picks up the errors and capacitate the process so that those errors can be given attention. So those ones, we've seen them happening, but the problem, Chair, is property audits in the province are not actually performed consistently. We see that issue like contributing to some of the audits where property audit is done, but they still get the findings. But we see other audits or departments who follow that and they still get it right. So it's more of you've got the process, but the process is not being implemented consistently. Therefore, there's a need also from the Provincial Treasury to look at that to see how it can be streamlined to make sure that it's applied consistently to avoid this type of deficiencies. Chair, the next one, it's basically on the corrective measures. I think we spoke about contingent compliance monitoring, which include the use of controls such as the SEM process compliance checklist, but those have to be implemented consistently. And we spoke through about a thorough procurement needs analysis for the department so that they can we can avoid the issues of procuring without following the SCM process, and the capacitation at BAC and BEC level to be more diligent when evaluating and adjudicating the bid. Effective contract management processes, also, Chair, we spoke about it to say within 6 months already for the continuing services, the departments should already have started the process of replacing those particular contracts before they expire to avoid month-on-month extensions. And also the probity audits for complex and significant or big tenders that are tedious in nature to also have a probity audit, but those probity audits need to be managed to make sure that they are consistently implemented to avoid instances of non-compliance. So those are the corrective measures that we put on the table, Chair. And maybe in terms of reflection on the uptake by the department, we did indicate that the first one being the contract extensions. We've seen at DED 2 contracts, the lease contract being eradicated, which speaks to at least some responsiveness in terms of dealing with the issue, although there's still some of the contracts that needs attention within DED. And also education, we're still seeing the month-to-month extension happening there, as well as, yes, actually the remaining ones are at DED, as well as education that needs to be attended. Then probity audit, we did speak about them to say we're seeing it happening or working, but it needs to be strengthened from the provincial treasury to make sure that it's consistently implemented across. And the other one, the procurement planning needs to be done right to make sure that we avoid the issues where we procure without not following the procurement process, the SCM processes. That one, Chair, also it's something that it needs attention. I don't think it's basically receiving the right attention from the accounting officers. And the capacitation at the BEC and BAC, I'm aware that Treasury is looking at that in terms of supporting through providing training. And we just urging Treasury to also cover the focus on the BEC and BAC members so that they are able to eradicate the residual issues in the process. Chair, I think that yeah, that will be it from our side. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Tate. I think members, the presentation was really to just empower us, you know, so that we're able to have deliberate and progressive discussions, and we can ask direct questions, because then at least it does show us where the focus should be when we do engage the departments directly. Welcome, MEC Motara.
Thank you. Morning, Chair, and morning to members of the committee.
Thank you so much for gracing us. It seems like your department is the only one that takes this committee very serious. Out of all 4, is it 5? 4 departments are the only one who's here. In fact, I'm going to give you an opportunity to present because the others, Mrs. decided not to be here. So they will have to wait on the line. Member Hickley?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to appreciate the AG's very thorough presentation and ask one question, if I may. My biggest concern is we see your findings repeatedly year after year, and I need to try and work out what kind of skills transfer we need as the Treasury Department. We need to get or what kind of capacitation we need to enforce within GPT to ensure that we don't have words like it's greatly reduced, but it's inconsistent. There is no follow-through, or it's not being applied consistently, or it is not being done appropriately. And we need guidance that we don't have these repeat findings year after year after year, not because you haven't given guidance to start off with, but it's not being applied consistently within the different departments, particularly in your top 3 offenders. And I don't know what the magic wand is, and I don't know what the magic words are that enable, whether it's the Auditor General, whether it's the Portfolio Committee, or who it is, that has to enable us to ensure that processes are followed consistently and that things are done the way they should be done. And I don't know if you have the magic wand that will enable us to crack the whip to make sure that they are done. That's the only thing I wanted to say. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thanks, Member Hicklin. Let's get input from Member Tlama.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to what Member Hicklin alluded to, are there any timelines set for the full implementation of the corrective measures that HSA recommended to the departments? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Tlama. Member Sedinyan.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think one chair will be to really ask the AG to perhaps give us for the lack of a better word, an option, especially in responding or dealing with the recurring findings that have no, or the department has no intention or have no intentions of resolving or even adhering to recommendations of the AG. I can tell you for sure, AG, it is deliberate that you still have departments who are still on month to month. And there is no intention of fixing that problem because it benefits them. They benefit out of that month to month contracts, which I can tell you, you said about this, you said this last year, we're still having it again here today. Then that tells you that there's a well-orchestrated plan or intention or even corrupt activity to continue to benefit out of this month-to-month thing. So we can be sitting here and receiving all these reports with more or less the same outcome. But my issue is, how will you advise us that we enforce some of these things, we assist in terms of resolving? Because eventually this thing must be kept and be dealt with and be closed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Sedinyani. AG, I can also reassure you that we had a meeting, remember, with you and the Speaker and the Chairperson of SCOPA, and you implored us to also try and engage the departments on finding out what is the value of the internal audit in the audit committee. Because then if they're going to have this recurring, we need to understand what is their role and what are the monitoring plans that they have put in place so that we can start seeing the value. So that's something that we are going to ensure that it is on our checklist, and we will continue to engage the department on. And yes, on your presentation, it shows us that the SCM controls are really not in place. There is a checklist, but there is no compliance. And it is our take as the committee that we really want to start seeing, as much as there is compliance with the PFMA, but also that there must be improvement in terms of the service delivery and also their performance. So it must talk and be aligned. Please do respond to the comments and then the questions. Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much, and thank you members for the questions. I'll respond to the questions I am able to respond to in our capacity as the AG. To the question with regards to the skills transfer for Provincial Treasury, my response to that is not really a skills issue at the Provincial Treasury. They're there to support the departments, similarly to your Office of the Premier and your COCTA, for example. But in Provincial Treasury's case, they obviously focus on clean audit strategy for the province. They focus on compliance. They also focus on the financial fiscus of the province. And I think with UIFW, it contributes a lot to whether clean audits can be achieved. Also, it relates to compliance matters. It then also relates to financial fiscus when you have fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So I would say that Provincial Treasury needs to continue focusing on these areas. It is part of the key mandate in terms of supporting the departments. But more importantly, to identify from the initiatives that are in place to support these departments, which initiatives have worked well to achieve the intended outcome, where intended outcome hasn't been achieved, which of these initiatives needs to be strengthened or re-looked at to ensure that you eradicate or at least reduce your state of non-compliance. Because for the province as a whole, what holds a lot of the departments that stays in your yellow space, which is your unqualified with material findings, a lot of them are still stuck with non-compliance findings. So it's just a matter of Provincial Treasury continuing to support the departments, but for them to identify where departments are lacking from a skills point of view, to see how best they can support them. I do know that there are SCM training initiatives in place for the departments and SCM officials, but just also to reap the benefits from that and see the impact from some of these initiatives. So I'd respond to that question like that. Obviously, there are there are accountability processes for the departments themselves. The accounting officer has a role and responsibility to hold his senior management accountable, and similarly the executive authority for the accounting officer. And then there obviously are oversight structures where you do find that these matters do continue to recur. Because ultimately you want a province that moves into a space of prevention of non-compliance rather than incurring non-compliance. So strengthening accountability is always key where you do find that these matters are continuing. And it's not really a case of a checklist not being implemented, but perhaps the non-compliance comes from other root causes rather. And that is why when we do engage the different accounting officers, we do focus a lot on root causes and recommendations in line with those root causes. With regards to, I'll then link it to the question with regards to timelines on corrective measures. So the best person to place timelines on these corrective measures is the accounting officer, because the accounting officer ultimately is responsible for ensuring that they implement the action plan that's put in place. So we always say as soon as the audit is finalized, have an action plan in place, make sure that it's timelessly implemented, and someone needs to monitor and track that action plan. And obviously a good action plan would have timelines and milestones on it too, so to ensure that they meet those milestones. So that's also a good way of for oversight structures to hold executive authority and accounting officers accountable in terms of what's your action plan and what timelines have you set, and continuously follow up on implementation of those actions within those timelines. And that's also very similar recommendation we make to internal audit also, and then the audit committee, because they do follow up on the action plans that have been put in place by the accounting officers. And then with regards to the question on 3 recommendations for recurring actions, or how to advise this portfolio committee where there are recurring actions. And it's very similar to my previous responses. The accounting officer has the responsibility, first of all, to prevent, if not prevention, detect, right? Detects instances of non-compliance, and especially where it's resulted in irregular expenditure. And similarly, instances of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, where money has been spent, but the value hasn't necessarily been derived from it. What's important once the irregular expenditure has been incurred is that there's time-years, what we call consequence management processes, but it's basically to investigate further to determine what would have caused this irregular expenditure, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and to determine whether anyone needs to be held accountable for that particular irregular expenditure and the instances of non-compliance or the instances of losses. So it falls back on the accounting officer. We often make a reference to the accountability ecosystem. The Auditor General sits somewhere in the middle of that accountability ecosystem. On the left of the Auditor General, you do get senior management and accounting officers. Somewhere in the middle, you do find your internal audit and audit committee. So ultimately, before the Auditor General comes in, and to your point, Chair, there's the internal audit process. Another assurance provider that's there throughout the year. So it's also very important, I would say, for internal audit to track some of these instances of non-compliance that has resulted in irregular expenditure, but also instances that have continued to recur and continue year on year. Ultimately, their role is to identify controls that have not worked or that are working but not being implemented, but to also ensure that there are good recommendations on controls that should be put in place to prevent non-compliance so that irregular expenditure can be avoided, and similarly financial management to avoid fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And the audit committee's function is then just a governance role, and they've got a role over internal audit to ensure that internal audit is focusing on the right things, is focusing on the risks for each department and entity, and that there is implementation of the audit plans to report on these risks. But more importantly, I think for this province, is to ensure that when internal audit does give recommendations, there is implementation of those recommendations on a timely basis by management. I think that will also assist in terms of managing recurring findings, first of all, but also by the time the external audit starts, we don't then find the same things, or we don't find as many findings as we sometimes do, because internal audit has been there and management have implemented the recommendations. So that's also quite important. I think I've covered all the questions. I think as an oversight committee, for this committee to continuously just follow up on some of the key matters for this province from a financial point of view. Also to work with Treasury in terms of the areas they focusing on to support the province, and to also see which initiatives are in place, what outcomes have been achieved from them, the impact of it, and what the outcomes that we've shared, how does one, or where do opportunities lie to strengthen some of the support initiatives that are in place to obviously assist the departments and entities. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, AG, for the responses. We do really want to also, say that we are going to really engage the departments on trying to find out whether the support that they're also getting from Treasury, if it's sufficient and whether it needs to be improved. Because we believe that it will help, you know, in ensuring that the department perform and they attend to some of these matters that are challenging them. So we really want to thank you, and as you have requested, you may be released. Thank you so much. Members, let's note the presentation from the AG. Thank you so much. We are now moving on to the next, which is the Department of Human Settlement, followed by Health. Oh, okay. Then wants me to emphasize why we're here. Now, the audit outcomes of 2025, and as was presented now by the AG, it reveals that your department, MEC, incurred 533 million in irregular expenditure, and 3.1 was in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So we have requested the department to make a presentation on the scope and the nature of financial and technical support provided by the Provincial Treasury to the Provincial Department. You also need to give us examples of the targeted interventions on or partnerships that have yielded improvements in budgeting, expenditure management, or audit outcomes. Also, what are the coordinating mechanisms between the department and Provincial Treasury, including any joint planning or monitoring forums. The department's view on the effectiveness of such support and areas that require strengthening. I've just alluded to that. And if there are any lessons learned or best practices that could inform future collaboration across sectors. MEC, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and once again, morning to yourself and morning to members of the Portfolio Committee. Chair, we have prepared a presentation. I think it doesn't follow the exact order of the questions in your letter to us, but it is covered in what you had asked. Safe to say that we do, yes, work with the AG. We also do work with the Provincial Treasury in terms of the support that they are meant to provide to the departments. The department is funded, a majority of our funding is from the conditional grants. We receive 3 grants, all from National Human Settlements. It's the EPWP grant, it's the ISUPG, or the Informal Settlement Upgrade Grant, Partnership Grant, and then the HSDG, which is the Human Settlement Development Grant. We do get a small amount of equitable share for not necessarily our core function. Our core functions are funded by the conditional grants. We have, in our presentation and report, we do explain just our audit opinion, where the matters of emphasis have been, and then give you a background just to the housing fund. The housing fund, it's within the department, and then we also do speak about what has been the support, how far we've gone in terms of implementation, and some of the lessons that we've learned. I'll ask, I'm here with the HOD, the executive managers, as well as the CFO. I'll hand over to the HOD also through your chair, just to make comments and introduce who's going to take us through the presentation. Thanks.
Good morning, Chairperson and members of the committee. My name is Puleng Mabaso. I'm the HOD for the department. With me is the team CFO. We will be doing the presentation. I also have the branch heads in the department, DDG Nomfundo Ngwenya, responsible for property and asset management, including the housing fund. I'm with DDG Ngwako, who is responsible for Ngwako Molukume, who is responsible for sustainable development planning. I'm with DDG Pumzilo Masoko Sibubi, responsible for Human Settlements Implementation Program, and the Chief Director for Strategic Planning, Mr. Branham Francis. with the opening remarks from the Chair, I also align myself to what the MEC has said. Our presentation will take through the committee in terms of the request by the committee. We've also went through what other issues that the committee did not ask for and also included them in the presentation, but to also give the committee and take them into confidence that as a department, we've also looked at our own blind spots in terms of what came through from the audit report from the last financial year, 2024-25. We've also put systems in place and mitigation measures to make sure that what the AG has advised that we must do, we also make sure that we're gonna do those. Yesterday we had a meeting with AG to look into our post-audit review process. The department undertook a session for post-audit review with MEC in August, immediately after we received the reports. Yesterday was with AG, Office of the Auditor General, including Office of the Provincial AG. So in those meetings, Chair and committee, we're looking at what issues were raised by AG, what is the expectation for the department to make sure that we raise the bar and we resolve the issues that are being raised by AG. We are also looking at our own, strengthening our own internal controls. I think as Chair has said earlier on, and the response from Melissa, to say how are departments strengthening their own internal controls in departments. We also are looking at the new culture shift in terms of our own AG processes to make sure that the culture shift that AG is also advocating for departments to implement. As a department, we also are raising the bar and we're also meeting the expectations of AG on that new culture shift. We've noted the challenges that we have in the housing fund. The team in the last 2 weeks, last month, we met the team KZN as part of the benchmarking process. I think, Chair, you just alluded earlier on to say what partnerships are we having or joint planning forums are we looking into as a department. In the last month, we had a benchmarking session with KZN. This week, Monday and Tuesday, the team went to Western Cape Human Settlements on another benchmarking process together with Office of the Provincial AG, joining the team just to look into the issues that were raised in our own audit reports, look at how other human settlements departments across the country, how are they addressing these issues. We've also engaged National to say, with our benchmarking, we'll also want to have some sessions with them just to look into how, as Gauteng Provincial Department of Human Settlements, how are we going to make sure that we address our pain point, Chair, as we've noted also in the report and what AG has presented, is mostly so on the housing fund. We have been provided 2 years as a department to make sure that we then wind down the housing fund. Part of the work that we are doing, not only to address what AG has actually noted in the report, in the report that we received, audit report, but we are also saying let's gear ourselves up to, as we wind down and close the fund, let's close it, making sure that all the issues that were raised by AG, we have already addressed them. So that's where we are, Chair. I think the presentation by CFO will also look into other issues in terms of the issues of housing fund. But Chair, I would like, through your permission then, for CFO to take us through the presentation just for more information on the matters. Thanks, Chair.
Good morning, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, Honourable MEC and colleagues. My name is Abdullah Ismail. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the department. I'll take you through the presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Chair, this is our audit report, which is the summary for the main vote for human settlements. It was an unqualified audit opinion with emphasis of matter. The emphasis of matter speak to the contingent liabilities, which is your ongoing lawsuits. They raise the issue of that the outcomes are uncertain. There was an emphasis of matter on the restatement of prior year figures due to changes and errors, and of course material impairments, 182.8 million, which is under irrecoverable receivables. What that is, Chair, for the committee, is the money that is owed to us by the city of Kuruleni, where we paid for the bulk, which they need to refund us upon. Under performance findings, the program audited was the housing development and the housing asset and property management, which is your program 3 and your program 4. What they found there was hostel maintenance target achievement was unverified. I think we struggled with trying to give them the proper portfolio of evidence. The quality assured housing units, we reported 99.89% versus the actual 64%. Poorly defined indicators, here we struggled in terms of especially the indicators that are set by national. And then title deeds, of course, was the one that is largely underachieved within the performance reporting findings. Targets was budget, housing development, 81.2% targets, met 96.1% of the budget spent. Housing asset, 50% of the targets met, 99.7% of the budget spent. There was a material misstatement in the housing development performance information, and not necessarily all of that was corrected, but we struggled a bit with the AG on that one. Further matters of emphasis was the PFMA non-compliance. This is the material misstatements or the changes which I spoke about. Obviously, this is corrected, but it raises the non-compliance when it's material misstatements. Lack of prevention measures for irregular and fruitless wasteful expenditure. I think the challenge here, Chair and members, was the fruitless and wasteful, because there was no irregular for the year in question, relates to historical court matters that were finalized, and subsequently you were given a court order, and within that court order was a portion of interest. So it was an inherent matter which we then had to settle, and subsequent to that settlement was an interest payment. So it's not necessarily that we don't have measures to prevent. We certainly have many measures to prevent fruitless and wasteful, because we incur no interest in the year in question. And then insufficient evidence on the ISOP funded program. ISUPG, which is your informal settlement partnership grant, there was a challenge in terms of the first quarter reporting, and they raised it as a non-compliance. Poor monitoring of performance info. They tend to want to say it's a control deficiency, but it's not necessarily an internal control deficiency. It's the only way where AG can put it, but there is certainly a monitoring on a lot of government work. Then there was material irregularity. These are MIs that were issued to the department since 2020. We have subsequently closed that MI, or the AG has given us that the matter is closed. There's been quite noticeable improvement. The fact that there was no finding on procurement and contract management is testament that there's no irregular expenditure. That's where you find your bigger gaps. And consequence management, meaning a lot of cases have been closed, which is assisting us in condoning some of the irregular expenditure. Chair, on the housing fund, the housing fund is not a listed entity. It has no bank account, and all the properties within the housing fund were inherited from its predecessors, like the National Housing Board and many names, many years. All of those assets have been incorporated under the housing funds. These properties are managed on a data system, which is also owned by National Department of Human Settlements, and they interface on a trial balance of the vote. And I think this is where we struggle, because the debt system at national is currently also being shut down because of its inability to assist anyone. These transactions are then identified by housing debt, the prefix being housing debt, and they are disclosed as a receivable on the side of the vote, as it appears in the vote as a debit balance, noting that the housing fund doesn't have its own set of books or bank account. We have de-recognized them, and we've disclosed it now as inventory. We've been struggling with debtors on the housing fund for many years. It's been a disclaimed item. We've realized that in essence, you're not even going to collect that debt because it's historic, it's either prescribed, or that in essence it costs you more from a maintenance and municipal services cost and the value of the debt. So we've de-recognized all the debt and we're treating it as inventory. And we then move that over as we transfer, we then dispose of the inventory accordingly. These transactions are pulled from the payment report of the vote, and then it's disclosed as a service in kind, which is a revenue portion within the contra of the expenditure of the housing fund. So the housing fund is a trading entity, but it has no bank account, so it's managed through the vote, and it needs to be managed like this from an accounting perspective. They did give us a disclaimer. They were unable to express an opinion. We did struggle a lot with the AG. We had a challenge. We had introduced a new financial system into the housing fund, Caseware. Unfortunately, the interface of the journals on Caseware did not pull through when the submission was done. We then reverted back to the historic Excel that we always did housing fund with. AG then did not want to accept the Excel. They wanted us to try and reconcile between the Caseware and the Excel, and we found that to be an impossible task. And subsequently, it then resulted in them not actually doing any audit on the housing fund, which is unfortunate because a lot of hard work went into the corrective measures of the housing fund. So what was their disclaimer based on? Inventories. They claimed that it was supporting evidence, but the reality is they didn't even look at anything that was given to them. Receivables from exchange transactions. This is, of course, when we dispose of assets and we receive some funding. Payables, this is where we also, the municipal accounts, we have we have a number of municipal accounts. We have over 700 just at City of Joburg based on the properties we own. Service rendered in kind. What is service rendered? This is, we, as myself as the CFO, my team, then we have Didi Nomfundo and her whole team. We are all covered through the salary bill of the vote because the housing fund doesn't have its own bank account or a budget. So the fact that we work on the housing fund, we offer the services in kind, but we need to value that. So for an example, the DDJ and her team, predominantly most of the salary goes to the housing fund. Mine, at the 15% of mine is an expense to the housing fund, or just as an example, it goes up slightly. But that's happened and that's deemed as services in kind. Municipal expenses, as you can see, it's at 327 million, 372 in the prior year. This just gives you a sense of how much we're paying towards municipal services based on the assets within the housing fund. And then, of course, we have maintenance, which was 146 million. Within this housing fund, you would note that we have the 6 hostels that belong to the province, as well as the flats, your Eldorado, Lenasia, Hillbrow related flats. We then are responsible for the maintenance of these facilities, and there's a lot of maintenance that happens on a daily basis, as you're aware, because there are people living within these areas. We also have cleaning expenses, which is what is run at the hostels. We pay for cleaning there for the 6 hostels. Related party transactions. So what happens, as I explained, that we as the vote manage the entire transactional issues for the housing fund. So the housing fund and ourselves have a related party relationship. So you have to disclose it as a related party transaction. There were some issues on the prior period errors. They spoke about consulting fees. The consulting fees are linked to the hostels where we're doing some consulting work, or most of it was done. Accumulated surplus, obviously this has an impact. If all your numbers they are not auditing, then certainly your accumulated surplus to them would be deemed incorrect. And then of course the net cash flow, which links to the whole transactions. These findings collectively resulted in a disclaimer of the opinion and raised the issue around the housing fund, which was rather unfortunate, but we were not winning with the AG. Hence, we proceeded to focus on the vote and accept what was given to the fund. In terms of the compliance with legislation, obviously it's the financial statements, which is your first PFMA non-compliance. They say lack of proper asset management because they have not audited, so they would just raise it. Ineffective expenditure management because they were not able to audit or they failed to audit. they would raise this as an ineffective expenditure management because they did not even look at the numbers to pass an opinion. It would raise that, according to them, the deficiency would be senior management's failure, lack of oversight by the accounting officer, and ineffective controls in the financial statement preparation process. So what is the nature and the support that we've received? The Office of the PAG, Provincial Accountant General, has allocated a full-time staff member to assist the Department of the Housing Fund. So they are housed within our offices, and they're assisting us from the Provincial Auditor General's office, and it certainly yielded positive results in the quarterly AFS that we've just recently presented. Currently, when I say currently, it was Monday, Tuesday, they returned on Wednesday. The Provincial Treasury's Accountant General team with the finance team as well as the Housing Fund team did a benchmarking exercise at the Western Cape Provincial Government. They did that to understand how their housing fund was being managed. Their housing fund actually sits at zero. They've actually transferred all of the assets from the housing fund into the vote, which has resulted in then the housing fund not having any transactions. Something we're also looking at. So we're looking at our plan. We expect this plan to come out in the next 2 weeks regarding the housing fund from the teams that travel. HOD also spoke about our benchmark with KZN. Fortunately, they visited Gauteng, and we took advantage to discuss and engage extensively on how they also manage their housing fund. It is unfortunate that AG did not audit the housing fund, but it would have shown the extensive work that has been done within the fixed asset register. In fact, we have a very competent and clean asset register now. It has GPS coordinates, it has images, it has the link to the title deed from the wind deed system, and it also interacts to any other system that is needed on it. So we've done a lot of work. We're confident our asset register is clean. Excuse me, this then assists us with the municipal accounts as well as the debtors, because then we can start linking the two. Support from the Treasury has very much yielded positive outcomes, and they're now assisting us with the closure. The closure, as HOD mentioned, it's 2 years for the closure of the housing fund, but the closure is subject to the transfer of all of the assets out. In essence, these assets are the responsibility of the municipality and are currently being transferred to them accordingly. Further to our implementation plan, there's a subcommittee disclosure item that they have regular meetings, my apologies. The subcommittees do meet regularly. There's an action team that meets every 2 weeks and gives feedback to the HOD in terms of progress. There's clear roles and responsibilities, who's responsible for what. Because I think that was a bit of a challenge. If you don't have clear roles and responsibility, you don't know who's accountable for what and who to hold accountable if something is incorrect. The system prior to BAS and SAP closure. So what we've done now is we do further review before we do closure. The submitted information is aligned to the IFS and AFS, and this is obviously signed off by myself. Process owners sign off the disclosure, so now we hold them accountable. If you, for an example, are within HR and we ask you for the key personnel in terms of the disclosure number and the working documents, you are to sign and certify accordingly so that we can hold you accountable, and we add that to our portfolio file in submission of information, so we hold people accountable for their disclosure. Process owners communicate any changes, even if it's after financial year end, that might affect subsequent events or events after the reporting date. The environment we operate in is not ideal to the extent that everything remains stagnant. Things do change. That's why we have this issue of, or we are allowed to report subsequent events, as long as we can track and trace it and provide the portfolio of evidence. So now we hold process owners accountable based on what they've disclosed and signed off. If there's any change, they still have an opportunity to engage us so that we reflect the financials correctly and make the changes. What are our areas of focus? Prepayments, which is your modified cash standard, Chapter 9, As you're aware, Chair, the new modified cash standard does not allow you to transfer any money to municipalities now. It is classified as a prepayment or as an advance payment. Treasury has also implemented this circular that they will not transfer money to entities or municipalities. It must be accompanied by invoices on the side of the municipality or the entity that actual work had commenced and is completed, and it's at the stage of payment. This will avoid the risk of prepayments. I think National Treasury wants to avoid the fiscal dumping that happens at the end of financial year when transfers are made to entities and municipalities. Retentions and provisions. As a built environment institution, we do apply the rule of retention on invoices, 5 to 10% based on the kind of work. And this subsequently is required for us to create a provision because it's a future liability for government, meaning that after the 12-month latent defect period, that is to be paid out. So you have to generate that. Contingent liabilities and contingent assets, which is your modified cash standard, chapter 14. We spoke about the uncertainty which AG raised as a emphasis of matter. Receivable impairment, this is a City of Kuruleni matter, I did speak about it. What I can do report is that we are now at the final stages of an agreement with City of Kuruleni with National Human Settlements. They do acknowledge the debt and they are committed to paying this debt off within the next 2 years because it's a large sum, and it will automatically be ring-fenced from their USDG grant at National Human Settlements and transferred straight to the province, so that debt will be settled. Related party transactions, which is the housing fund, as explained, this is a lot of detail, but we are now having this under control because for every housing fund transaction, there's a portfolio of evidence linked behind it. There's a challenge also being raised by AG, the fact that VAT is deemed to be fruitless and wasteful expenditure, VAT that we are charged. In terms of the housing or the Schedule 5 grant, any funding that is used within the Schedule 5 grant linked to the development or material or related purchases to the development should be zero rated. So it has not been the case for a lot of the professional teams, professional companies that you pay, the PSP and the PRTs, and now AG wants to raise this as a fruitless. We have submitted our issues to National Human Settlements as well as SARS and National Treasury. They are currently in an engagement. We are waiting an outcome from them. The outcome we seek is the condonement of the prior years, because they want us to go as far back as 2016 and start recouping all of the VAT that was paid linked to this DORA grant. Accrued departmental revenue completeness, this is interest really generated. When we purchase land, obviously the funding goes to the conveyancer and subsequently we do earn some interest, because part of it is that they must sign an investment mandate. So that's where we accrue just a little bit, but we're not a revenue generating department. We don't create much or many or large sums of revenue. The focus area, the two possible scenarios where it's dormant. When I spoke of dormant, I spoke about the transfer of all of the assets out, making it dormant. So we have benchmarked with 2 out of 3 provinces so far. We disclosed the inventory on Annexure 6 under the vote, which is unaudited by the 3rd quarter. We developed a committee comprising of all of them: property management, asset disposal, PAG's office, finance, corporate governance, as well as National Department of Human Settlements, and we ensure compliance with modified cash standards. So that is the ability to bring the housing fund to dormant. To create it as a going concern, we benchmark also with the other provinces. We recreate a trial balance. This is journals with supporting information. We continue de-recognizing the debtors. We reconcile the inventory register and the debtor system so the two can talk to each other. We analyze the housing debt according to the line items and where it fits and if it should fit within the trial balance. And we ensure full compliance with GRAP because this one is subject to GRAP, it's accrual accounting. What are the lessons that we've learned to date? Prepayments, no reconciliations with supporting documents, balances not aligned to the disclosure. Example, Ren West submitted a bank statement which has more funds than what was transferred. And of course, how do you determine what is the accrued interest on that, and where is our funds ring-fenced for the project that we've transferred to you? Retentions, this is the 10%, 5 to 10% that I spoke of, and we have already have a system in place. We are settling the historic retentions, and we're looking at the way forward, because at this stage we seek a performance guarantee from the developer, but we're looking at the option of both performance guarantee and retention, which would then have an impact on the contracts being readjusted. Contingent liabilities, so we're seeking that settled cases be quickly fast-tracked. I think there has been a reduction, but obviously with contingent liabilities in the legal systems, you're at the mercy of the courts, and this could take a long time accordingly. We are also looking at our historical irregular expenditure. Chair, as you're aware, this department in 2017 suffered a loss when the Bank of Lisbon fire happened. It lost all of its documentation, which has made it a matter of impracticality at this stage, because without documents and information, you find it very difficult to investigate and finalize the investigation for the irregularity and move it to the condonement. So you're looking at the option of impracticality. We've engaged Treasury. We've submitted our first submission of impracticality. It's going as far back as 2012. We'll await the outcome to see if the condonation committee will consider it or not. We have outsourced 43 matters, investigative matters. They are under consideration for the condonation portion, because what subsequently happened is that that recommended report was handed to the accounting officer, who subsequently, from the report, acted on any of the recommendations linked to consequence management. So all of that has been happening. What was the irregular of 532 that was raised? It is not for the current year. It was a matter that was under investigation from the prior year. It was the hostel appointment, the the maintenance one. And subsequently, it has come out that the matter has to be or remains of irregularity of nature. So subsequently, we have to move it from assessment now into irregular balances. So it's not 532 incurred irregular, it's 532 historic matters which are now classified as irregular. Once final investigations and reports are approved and signed off, they are sent to Labor Relations for implementation, and therefore consequence management is applied based on the outcome of that report. Some of the recommendations, Chair, benchmarking exercise has been held with KZN, and information sharing on material irregularities. So as CFOs, we engage with my counterparts in other provinces. We share information, we share what is working for them, where have they been successful, and we share that kind of information like I would with them, and they would then apply it, or we would apply to see the successes of improvement within the department. So we have a very strong relationship with those two provinces. We've also informed the municipality that if we are to ever transfer funding for a project, they should create a bank account linked to that project where those funds will subsequently be parked, so that it's only purely for that. Funds are made available for the writing off of the housing fund balance, so we are busy with that as explained. Monthly financial and non-financial reports with support to be provided as portfolio of evidence. So that is for the prepayments or journals or anything linked to the to that. So what I can say there, Chair, is that there has to be portfolio of evidence. Without a POE, one will not even look at processing the journal. Prepayment disclosures are supported with payment batches, performance reports, electronic bank transactions, bank statements from the third parties. So when we do give you money and you do use it for the project that we've allocated for, you as the entity or municipality must keep a tight lid on it, have a separate bank account, run all of the payments out of there and subsequently provide all of that to us so that we can move it from prepayment to expenditure. But at this stage with Provincial Treasury, it's actual expenditure because they need to give us an invoice in order for them to pay. Thank you very much, Chair. I'll pause there for now.
Thank you, Chair. That's then our presentation.
Thank you, MEC and the HOD and CFO for the presentation. Members, I'm going to hand over to you to pose questions. My only concern though, MEC, on the lessons learned slide, you know, some of the questions that we wanted to follow up on and in fact get more, you are saying that this disclosed amount of the UIFW that we spoke about are all under investigation with the investigation team. Now it says to us then it means we must also follow up with you know, more written questions to follow up so that then we get this information that we are looking for. We do gather on the support that we're getting from the department, but also these other controls also need to be responded to. Member Sedinyani, Member Hicklin. All right, welcome, Member Paul.
No, thank you very much, Chair. We can confirm that part of the presentation talks about officials who would have been responsible for authorizing or rather failing to prevent that expenditure. I'm interested to know if the department would have identified and are willing to even tell us who are those officials that are responsible, and if there was any action or intended action to be taken against such officials. Will be glad to hear the intention of the department. Secondly, Chair, has the in the very same space, if there is any intention of a disciplinary hearing and all of that. And the other one, Chair, is the issue of whether did the internal audit, or rather the audit committee, flags this risk before they could occur, and if so, why were the recommendations not implemented? It's very important that the department also explain that. Thirdly, Chair, the value of that irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Would be interested to know if the department will be able to give us that kind of a value, if they do know that value. And the other one, Chair, will be how has the department responded to Auditor General's findings and its recommendations? It's important that, especially when we talk to issues of recurring of this same and more or less the same, what is the attitude of the department? And I said it earlier on here, Chair. In the last financial year, the same findings get to be presented again in this current audit. And I can tell you, the department would have perhaps have those recurring, same and same. But what is the attitude of the department in trying to mitigate and avoid the same recurring of the audit outcome or input by the Auditor General. Let me pause there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Sidinyani and Member Hicklin.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I echo what my colleague has said and also just want to highlight the state of the hostels is dire. You have an amount of 22.5 million rand that you say has been spent on cleaning. I would love to see the evidence of where that cleaning actually took place, because oversight visits to various hostels within the Johannesburg area lead me to believe that there has not been one single solitary iota of cleaning of any nature that has taken place in any hostel. There has also been absolutely no attention to detail to actually addressing the dire situation and the dire circumstances under which people living in those hostels actually live. Because I wouldn't put my dog in any of those hostels. And it's a crying shame that we expect people to live under those conditions. And I know that this is not the forum for it, but you are claiming that money has been paid out to address these problems. And my question to you is, where? And much like Member Sesidinyani, I see a repetition of a lack of accountability of anyone willing to take responsibility, and there seems to be no consequence management for fruitless and wasteful expenditure in the Human Settlements Department, whether it's the housing fund, whether it's an inability for this software to speak to that software, and therefore problems occurring that the Auditor General can't audit your systems. I understand that you say a lot of work was done. We have to take your word for it. What consequence management is there that takes place within human settlements that we will not have this same discussion in 12 months' time? Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Hicklin. I just also wanted just to add on some of these questions. The presentation on, is it the Informal Settlement Housing Fund, where the Auditor General refused to, ended up not auditing. So maybe just to take the committee through and reassure us, how are you going to address the AG's concerns, that led to it not being audited. I understand there's an Excel spreadsheet that you are using, but now obviously it means the AG was still not satisfied with that process. So what other process then have you agreed on to make sure that it gets audited? And also just for our own understanding then, what weaknesses would have contributed to that occurrence itself? It will be important for you to take us through it. The other slide was on the municipal expenses. Also that there was insufficient evidence for municipal expenses that were stated, and it runs into millions as well. Our concern as the committee is that human settlement is one of those departments that is tagged to not be paying, owing the municipalities. So therefore, I think it's important for you to clarify us on that, because we understand the treasurer would have told us that sometimes, yes, the municipalities' billing system, they would also need to bring you evidence for you to be able to pay. I'll stop there. Thanks. You can respond, MEC.
Maybe before, Chair,
Yes.
there's one that I forgot. Chair, the MEC, when she started, she also spoke about conditional grants, especially in relation to EPWP. I'll be interested also to check from the MEC the percentage in which that conditional grant would have been utilized that she spoke about. And I'm raising this because the issue of unemployment in our community, especially in Gauteng, remains the biggest challenge and a problem. So I'm interested in that, especially after I saw in one report the Department of Infrastructure could not even spend that conditional grant. So I want to know the spending of that current conditional grant in relation to EPWP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Member Sendinen. MEC, you would recall that you also took us through the performance of your department. So it does raise an interest, for members. So members will not only focus now on UIFWs, but at least other matters that you could respond to. Thanks.
Thank you, no problem, Chair. I'll start with the last question on conditional grant. For the EPWP, we spent 100%. In the last financial year and even in previous financial years, we've not surrendered any EPWP funding. On the matter related to owing municipalities, so we do pay our municipal accounts insofar as our properties that we own in municipalities, but it's linked to, part of it is linked to also the housing fund, which we are meant as all provinces to close our housing funds. So we pay what we owe to municipalities, but we are devolving the properties to municipalities. So as we devolve it and transfer these back to the municipalities, we will no longer be liable for those properties insofar as rates and taxes and services are concerned. But again, we've got, in our business plan and budgets, we do budget for municipal services. The comments on the state of the hostels, so I agree with Member Hicklin that the hostels, the state of the hostels are dire, but we only, as the province, own 6 hostels. So I'm not sure which hostels Member Hicklin is referring to. We are doing, we clean daily inside the hostels. Those 6 hostels, they are only, the hostels owned by us are in the city of Joburg, in the inner city. I can list them for you, but the rest of the hostels, for instance, hostels outside of the 6 in the city of Joburg are owned by the city of Joburg. Then Ekurhuleni owns hostels, so does City of Tshwane, so does the Sedibeng municipalities and the West Rand municipalities. But we have, as a 7th administration commitment, confirmed that we will support all municipalities in the hostels to the extent that we will do remedial works in one hostel owned by a municipality. So in Tshwane, we will do Mamelodi. In Sedibeng, we will do Ratanda. In Ekurhuleni, we will do Setoga. In Johannesburg, we will do the Jabulani Hostel. And in the West Rand, it's Kagiso. But the 6 hostels that we own, we do the cleaning on the inside. Of course, the refuse removal, etc., on the outside is still the responsibility of the municipality. And at any point, Member Chair, that the portfolio committee would like to go to the 6 hostels that we own, we would be pleased to take the portfolio committee to go with us to look at the state of this of the 6 hostels. But I think that the 6 hostels that we own, we are the intention is to complete the refurbishment and also devolve them to the city of Johannesburg, because they are also in the housing fund. They have to go as an asset and property to the municipality. So the intention is, once we have concluded the full refurbishment of the 6, we'll be transferring them and devolving them to the city of Joburg. That will then mean that the province doesn't own any hostel and therefore does not have liability to maintain or do things like cleaning and the management of residents in the hostel. How do we respond to the findings of the Auditor General? So post the last audit period, we then went and had a 2-day session as a department where we took each and every finding. We developed a response plan prior to responding as management to the Auditor General's findings in the form of action plan. So that allowed us to go in detail to all the findings, what are the actions needed to be taken, what must we do internally, those that we can resolve internally, what are those that we need resolutions, we need external assistance to be able to help us to find resolutions to those findings. So that helped us then to develop our action plan. We monitor, so the accounting officer monitors the responses to the action plan by business units and process owners. I do the same in the EMT, where we also check whether we've responded to, we've closed them. We're making a lot of progress in the current findings of the AG, but the challenge is on the historic findings, and I think that's what Member Hicklin was wanting to really get a sense of, is our attitude to the historic findings. But so we have sort of segregated the historic findings. Yes, a lot of the historic findings, as the CFO was explaining, we are unable to close them because of the evidence required. So supporting documentation that would have been lost in the fire, the evidence required. It accounts for the bulk of our irregular expenditure in those previous years. We've submitted to Treasury condonement and a process for Treasury to be able to help us go forward. That it's impractical for us to be able to close it in the manner in which you ordinarily close findings. The manner in which you ordinarily close findings is you've got to investigate it, use the evidence that you have, then you've got to investigate based on the outcomes of the investigation. If there is to be action taken against officials, that action must be taken through disciplinary processes. Once disciplinary processes are concluded, that forms part of the report that goes through condonement. But if you don't have evidence, a portfolio of evidence is not existing, it becomes impractical to do that, and that is linked to the loss of documentation in that period of the previous years. We are waiting Treasury to give us their opinion on it, on whether it is impractical as we are stating. Treasury will make that determination so that we know what do we do going forward. If it is still from the side of Treasury deemed to be practical for us to close, we'll have to look at what Treasury says, how we do it, and then take it forward. The matters under investigation that we've outsourced, that is to a legal firm for us to be able to go through those 48 matters for us to close it through that external resource helping us with the investigations. And we have reported it to the oversight bodies, but Chair, we can also share it with the portfolio committee, the detail of those matters, what are they related to, how far is the investigation, etc. Because it's only on conclusion of investigations will we know what steps to take for consequence management. Because when you submit to Treasury for condonement, it must be closed to that extent. There must have been consequence management. I think maybe the CFO can just rephrase it or restate what was the value of the irregular expenditure. Currently, we have no irregular expenditure, so no new irregular expenditure. The 500, just over 500 million of irregular expenditure was that in the previous years, that matter, investigations were closed. We are now having to account for it. But in terms of new irregular expenditure, we don't have any new irregular expenditure. The matters that are closed, Member Sesedinyari will also give you the details of the officials that were responsible in the matters that were closed, and what was the action taken. We can also provide those details. I think I'll allow just the CFO just to maybe just to re-explain the value of the irregular expenditure over the period, so that members are able just to follow those that is historic, why we've not been able to close it. The housing fund, I think, is quite a difficult one for us. It's got historic issues, as we've said, that, and then it's also not, it's not a trading entity. So it's meant to be audited as part of the vote. It's not, well, our understanding is that it's not supposed to be, but it's because it's not a trading entity. We differ with the AG on how to audit it, and I think that's where the big disjuncture is because any transaction on the housing fund is done through the funds in the vote. Our big differing is it commences there with how we feel that the housing fund must be audited versus what the AG feels must be audited. We would have gone through a lot of work to clean a lot of the information in the housing fund. And then, of course, because there's a difference of views on how the housing fund must be audited, when at the end of the audit period, the AG then wanted us to produce the information in a different format. The information was not consistent, and it didn't, and that's what the CFO was explaining. It didn't pull through from one format into a different format, and because there was a distortion of sorts of the information, the AG then chose not to audit it at all, and hence the disclaimer. So we felt that had the AG audited the information as we had presented it, they would have been able to arrive at an opinion, but because from the onset there was just a difference in view of what and how the housing fund is and how it should be. As I think, obviously, learning from the Western Cape, they have taken all the assets, they've transferred it to the vote. So it's an accounting exercise that must be undergone, so you must transfer it from one to the other so that the vote can account for all the transactions. But again, devolving the properties, transferring them out. The directive from National Human Settlements is that the housing funds of all provinces must be closed. So whether we devolve it completely out of the province's assets into municipalities or into the vote, etc., we'll have to do possibly go through both, but as a fund, it's got its own history. It was properties of local authorities, properties of, and then put into, so it does have its own complication. But we think that with the assistance from Treasury, hopefully in the next auditing period, the AG will then look at the information and be able to be in a position to make an opinion on the accuracy, the validity of the information that we present. CFO, if you can just, again, just speak to the value of the irregular expenditure and maybe additional information on the housing fund that can help the committee. Thanks.
Thank you very much, MEC. Chair, through you, just to put it in context, 4 years ago, this department had irregular expenditure to the tune of over 11 billion that it was sitting at. We subsequently went into the entire pack to see what can we look at and start working upon. We've brought it down to 7.4 billion. So there's quite a bit of the irregular that we have gone down. Just a testament that that was where we could get information get the necessary investigative reports, consequence management reports, and apply that accordingly to the irregular and remove it. The 532 million is an irregularity of the prior year. There was an error on the tender in terms of the financial equations that were used to measure the liquidity of the companies. The BSc created a liquidity ratio which was not correct. AG found it to be of an incorrect nature, and subsequently the fund, all the 6 tenders that were awarded for the hostels resulted in the irregular. We tried to raise this, we looked at it from a different angle, we brought it to the PAG's office, and subsequently they said no, but the fact that you had this at the onset is irregular. So for the prior year, that 532 now was brought into the books of irregularity, but it's for the prior year, it's not for the current year. That pushed our irregular to 7.4 billion. But what I can say, Chair, and to the committee is that we've already submitted 3.3 billion rand worth of condonements to Provincial Treasury for them to consider it. Of that 3.3, 1.4 billion of that is on the impracticality. It's speaking to 2012 to 2014 irregular that we find to be of an impractical nature. So that's what we've currently put forward, and that hopefully by the end of the financial year, that irregular expenditure value would be reduced by the department. To further add on the housing fund, we did have an extensive meeting with AG yesterday. We raised the issue around the boxing match we had regarding the lack of audit. So we agreed to say, tell us what you believe would be the correct methodology to deal with the opening balances of the housing fund, so that we make sure we do this correctly, so that when it comes to financial year end, you will audit it and you will not raise challenges. So we agreed on a posture and a methodology which is going to assist us in ensuring that the housing fund does get audited, but also moves towards a much better picture in the future. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Connie.
Thank you very much, MEC, for the explanation and the clarity. We really want to thank you and the officials for making this presentation. And if there are any follow-up questions, as I said, we will also write to the department and request some of the information. Member Hickley, you wanted to say something? Sorry.
Just one thing, MEC, if you could make those, you mentioned hostels and I wasn't writing as fast as you were speaking. If you could make that, the 6 hostels and the different hostels available to me, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much, Chair.
No, thank you, MEC. I think the presentation was also empowering to the committee, because most of the members here in this committee are first time, you know, and we don't normally interact with I think most of us don't even serve on the human settlement portfolio. No. So at least now we do have an idea, and I think in the future we should be able to have direct questions. We really want to thank you, and if the MC would like to leave or stay, please feel free to do so. Thank you. I want to give members maybe just 5 minutes leg stretch. Yes, before we hand over to the officials from the Department of Health to take us through their presentation. Department of Health. We have received an apology from the MEC. And education is also here. Yes, I know. Health was supposed to start first, but because there was an MEC, we felt that the committee must give respect to the MEC because it's only officials who are here. We did not want to be harsh and tell you to go back because there's no MEC. So we will take your presentations and we'll also pose questions to you. I've requested that please stay away from giving us a presentation on performance, but just stick to the financial issues that we've raised, the questions that we've given you, so that we don't have a lengthy presentations. So from you, as I think it's the same, the provincial audit outcomes for the 2024-25 revealed that the Department of Health incurred 1.5 billion irregular expenditure and 10 million in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So you need to give us the nature and scope of the financial and technical support that is provided by Provincial Treasury to the department, the examples of targeted interventions or partnerships that have yielded improvement in budgeting, expenditure management, and or audit outcomes, coordination mechanisms between the department and Provincial Treasury, including any joint planning or monitoring forums, and the department's view on the effectiveness of such support and areas that require strengthening, and any lessons learned or best practices that could inform future collaboration across sectors. So that's the focus of this session today, is on the support really of the department in ensuring that you do come out of this situation that you are in right now. That is also applicable to Department of Education. You can go ahead and do the presentation. Just introduce the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
We're starting with health. Yes, we're starting with health. I just said you can join in. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Chair and members. My name is Montwedi Botsani. I'm the Chief Director for Budget and Revenue. I take the colleagues who will just introduce themselves.
Thank you, members of the legislation. My name is Mike. Okay. Thank you. My name is Mofedi Nhlapo. I am the Acting Chief Director, Supply Chain for the Department of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, other members. My name is Pakamisa Jonas. I'm the Chief Director, Financial Accounting. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Chair. We aligned our presentation in terms of the requirements, but maybe what I want to express, what is not expressed in the tables here, we have also engagements with the assistance of the Provincial Treasury in terms of what we term the budget bilateral. This is a process where we are engaging with the different facilities within the health department, mainly to assist in informing the adjustment budget, including the MTF allocations. Furthermore, the Provincial Treasury do assist and present during the departmental strategic planning in terms of the assessment and performance of the department financially. So we also have what is called the Grant Management Committee, mainly to address some of the issues relating to the performance of the primary health care cash subsidy, including the management of the municipal services that we are paying for the service that they are submitting to us. We have also engaged with our Provincial Treasurer to assist in terms of the assessment of the service platforms within the department around the primary health care and EMS. So I thought maybe just to give just at high level some of the assistance that the Provincial Treasury is assisting
which are not necessarily expressed in the presentation. The last two ones are more relating to the funding model, where we have asked our provincial treasury to assist in terms of the primary health care services. This is also maybe extended to the CFO forum, where we are participating as a Department of Health. So, Chair, just at high level, this is the table of contents as you have expressed them in the opening remarks. So in terms of the budget and revenue, Chair, we are participating mainly through the submission of the in-year monitoring report. This is what is prescribed in the PFMA. The extent, again, of assistance is allocated to the management of the budget during the annual budget forum. We have been provided some of the guidelines, including the timelines as and when we should be submitting our budget. The next slide then talks to the quarterly CFO forum. Technically, the department is participating in those forums where the different policies and standards are being shared from the National Treasury's point of view. We are also sharing some of the experiences and best practices to improve financial performance. I think of key and then of importance is the issues around the collaboration around the efficient use of the public funds, where we are sharing the best practices. In terms, again, of the medium-term expenditure committee, there are also issues around the deliberations on what is the strategies around the reduction of the accruals, which has been a burden in the department. At this stage, we have been sitting at around 8 billion when we closed our previous financial year, but there has been processes, including controls that we have put in place as part of the ongoing improvement in terms of the financial management. We did, during the previous year, again, tabled our strategies to the Finance Portfolio Committee in that regard. There has been, again, some of the issues around the emerging budget pressures, mainly relating to the issues around the burden of disease, including the number of patients that we are seeing within our facilities. So this, as part of the medium-term expenditure committee, are being expressed as part of the assistance in terms of either increasing the budget or utilizing the same budget to achieve better outcomes. There's also issues around the technical assistance capacity building. This is mainly around the financial management practices, where we are participating at different workshops and their bilateral engagements. In terms of revenue, we are participating and we have been allocated an amount of 65.6 million in the current financial year, mainly towards the revenue enhancement strategies within the department, because there is a room for us to improve in that regard. The main issues around this allocation are more related to the procurement of equipment, including the printers, where we are resourcing some of the beneficiaries that the department had to accrue and then bill for the service that is being provided. This is inclusive or extended to the Road Accident Fund, the South African Police Services, the Justice Department as well, including a number of medical aids where we are billing them for the services that have been provided. Around financial management, it's a continuation again, Chair, around the monthly in-year monitoring report. I think of importance as part of what we have indicated as a challenge has been the issues around the support around the annual financial statements, including what is called the 30-day supplier payment. This mainly has been an issue within the department with the value of accruals, where we're indicating we have opened this current financial year with a value of around 8 billion. So continuously, we are, as part of the technical support from Treasury, being assisted mainly towards the verification of the invoices that comes to the department to ensure that we don't have issues around the double payments where such issues might occur because we don't have sufficient systems to do so. In terms of the scope and nature of the support, we are indicating and continue to have some of the interventions and the reforms around the accrual reduction plans, the Operation Clean Audit, Maybe just to also indicate that as part of the previous financial year, we have seen an improved audit outcome in terms of the processes and controls that have been part of the joint reforms initiatives from the provincial treasury. Around the expenditure controls, we are continuing mainly towards the ensuring that we also pay our suppliers on time, which has been an issue that has been raised by the Auditor General around the cash flow projections as to how we project and ensure that we pay our suppliers within the 30-day compliance. There's also a cash flow management committee that we have established with them mainly around ensuring that the payment runs are approved from the central office, and then this is mainly limited to the available cash as and when we have agreed with our provincial treasury. Around the supply chain, which is a key issue that we have had some limited controls identified by the AG. We are continuing as part of this, implemented a number of supply chain reforms, mainly those that relate to the reduction of our irregular expenditure in the current year. And then we are continuing to facilitate some of the workshops, including the commitment controls and demand planning limited to the available budget. Of course, we are guided by the PFMA, including the treasury regulations. We have a unit chair within the department, the internal control. This is mainly assisting us towards the issues raised by the Auditor General, including the Gauteng audit services. This is part of ensuring that as part of the development of any audit action plans, how far do we reach such going forward? I must also maybe indicate the processes that we have indicated here, which are of importance. It's around the systems and digitization. We have requested our provincial treasury to assist in terms of digitizing the processing of the RLS 01. This is the initiation stage of the commitment of a transaction, including the approval thereof, the RLS 02. What we have also asked is around the budget blocking processes, around the support that Treasury will be assisting us with. We have seen a number of challenges around different facilities. That is why we have requested our provincial treasury to assist in that regard. What we have done and continue to be doing will be monitoring this performance on a monthly, including the quarterly reviews that we'll be making. I must also mention that as part of this, we have had yesterday the quarterly reviews with all the CEOs, chaired as such by the MEC, mainly towards looking into how far we have gone in terms of implementing some of the recommendations relating to the audit action plans. And we have seen some improvements, Chair, from what the departmental risk head has indicated as part of the risks that we needed to amplify and then put more measures and controls on them. This was mainly from the base of where we're sitting below the 50% mark, and then we have improved significantly so to the 67%. Majority of the issues that were raised by the AG and those that we have put controls and were part of the improvement in terms of the audit action plans, we have seen a reduction thereof. These are the targeted interventions, mainly relating to budget and revenue. We did talk about the medium-term expenditure committee engagements, including the IYM analysis. We have went into detail around the IYM, mainly to look into what is called the non-negotiable items. These are the prescribed items from the National Department of Health, ensuring that there is adequate funding towards those items. These include, but are not limited to, the medicine, medical supplies, consumables, including security allocations, as well as the vaccines towards the patients. So we have, as part of these processes, looked into the identifying the risks on a timely basis to ensure that as and when there is a funding gap, we're able to do and then accommodate and reallocate resources accordingly during the adjustment budget process. We have, as part of these processes, also looked into the management of the compensation of employees, mainly relating and aligning it to the human resource plans. I must also indicate, Chair, that we are almost in the final stage in terms of the approval of our human resource or organizational structure, which was last reviewed in 2006. We are managing this through the headcount growth. I take that you might be aware that we have initiated the verification of employees within the department, where we have found a number of employees that were not supposed to be within the department. We have taken corrective action in that regard. So this is part of the continuous improvement into ensuring that those that belong to the department are accounted for on a yearly basis. In terms of the revenue partnerships, I must also indicate, Chair, that there is a revenue incentive scheme of around 43.7 million that was allocated to the department. We did talk to the issues around the revenue enhancement strategy towards procuring some of the desktop printers, including the label printers, for the key hospitals within the department towards revenue enhancement strategy. Financial management, we are continuing as part of the improvement processes towards the value for money. We have had a number of challenges around the tenders or contracts within the department. We are, as part of this, as we all know, that all of our tenders are subjected to the probity audit process. The accrual reduction strategy as part of the partnerships yielding improvements, we must indicate, Chair, that as part of the processes that we have engaged with our provincial treasury, we have seen an improvement in terms of the 30-day supplier payment, where we had at the beginning of the financial year, due to the score changes that we have implemented, including deleting after verifying some of the invoices that were not supposed within the department. We have seen an improvement of supplier payment to 83% from the previous 0% at the beginning of the financial year. We are continuing, as part of this, Chair, track payment compliance in line with the PFM and Treasury Regulations 8.2.3. Around the financial turnaround and expenditure controls, this is mainly related to ensuring that we are able to utilize the available cash and continuing with the Treasury to ensure that as and when we request the monthly cash, we have that collaboration with them, that the available cash is available, and then we are able to pay some of the suppliers that we owe. The Operation Clean Audit, Chair, as part of this, the key issues that we have identified during the AG were mainly related to the asset management, including the accrual accounting and disclosure management. As part of the controls that we have implemented, these are the key issues within the department. We have had no asset register in the department, but we have continued to appoint a service provider to assist in that regard, because all of our assets were managed manually. So as part of the controls, the service provider has been appointed as such in the current financial year, so that we'll be able to move from that negative audit finding. Supply chain, just at high level, Chair, the key issues that also contributed to our value of increased irregular expenditure were mainly related to the implants, or what is normally called the consignment stock. These are the smaller items, Chair, that are being utilized as and when the patient has to be operated on. So as part of this, we have put the SOP enforcement within the facilities, and then just at high level, this is what we have put in place. The main issue here for us, Chair, was the issues around the centralization over the procurement of implants. We have, as part of these controls, also put some tenders in place, and then we'll be awarding a number of such so that we can move out of these challenges. I must also indicate these were some of the expected outcomes that we have put for ourselves, mainly to ensure that we reduce or eliminate the irregular expenditure relating to the consignment or the implants to the value of around 700 million. The issues around the payment processes, we have also looked into that across the different facilities so that we are able to ensure that those that relate to the service are being streamlined accordingly. I think of importance again, we have put in place the standardized and uniform pricing in line with the Provincial Procurement Policy Framework Act. We are continuing again, Chair, in terms of the inventory control management. We have, as part of this, requested our Provincial Treasury to assist in terms of automating our stock control systems. This process is still continuing, and then these are the key objectives of that plan that we are engaging with the Provincial Treasury. We are at this stage. I think the main thing for us is the high value of the dispensary and revolving stores that is valued around at around 1 billion. So that, as part of this automation, it will assist in ensuring that we don't have such challenges in the coming financial years. The commitment control as well is part of the measures that we are putting in place towards the fiscal discipline. I take that of importance here. This is just at high level what we are saying, the issues around the open purchase orders with no movement. What we have seen, and as part of the reviews that we have seen, there were instances where the purchase orders will be sitting in our systems for more than a year or even 2 or 3 months. So as part of these controls, if there is no movement after 2 months, the central office will have that authority to delete some of those that have been sitting there for more than 2 months. Around the internal control, Chair, as part of the targeted interventions are more relating to the audit action plan. We have, as part of the second quarter interaction with the different CEOs, have had our reviews yesterday, but we're continuing to have workshops with them where we have asked our AGSA, including Gauteng Audit Services, to assist in terms of implementing and tracking some of the challenges that were identified during these reviews. Coordination mechanism between us in terms of the revenue issues, I take, Chair, just as information sharing. We have what is called the uniform patient fees. This is mainly led through the National Department of Health, but as Gauteng Health, we are also required to declare the same and being approved here at legislature for any other uniform patient fee structure that we need to implement on the service provision by the health facilities. So in terms of the financial management, these are the coordination mechanisms between us and the GPT, mainly relating to the quarterly financial reviews, including the annual financial statements, technical support. As part of this, Chair, we have also identified a service provider to also assist in terms of enhancing the technical support that we receive from the Provincial Treasury. Around internal control mechanism between us and them is mainly around the CFO HOD bilaterals, mainly around the issues that we have identified as key risks around the irregular expenditure. We have, as part of this, also escalated a request to the Provincial Treasury to assist in terms of some of the condonation application that we have made through to them for the previous financial years. Effectiveness around budget, I take the key issues that we have identified and engaged and keep on engaging is the huge value around the debt that the department is being owed by the Road Accident Fund. We are talking about close to about 1.3 billion. We are, as part of this revenue collection enhancement strategy, engaged our Provincial Treasury to assist in tracking some of the debts that the Road Accident Fund owe the Gauteng Department of Health. Around the financial management, we have seen, as part of this, had impact in terms of the credibility around the budget, including payment compliance, mainly towards the 30-day supplier payment, Chair. Overall effectiveness of Treasury support, just at high level, Chair, the main issues that we are highlighting here are more related to the compliance monitoring and audit improvement. Like we have indicated in the opening remarks, we have seen a significant reduction in terms of the audit findings from the previous financial year above the other matters that were identified in the previous financial year for the 23-24 financial year. And the area of success, Chair, mainly this related to the accurate submission of our annual financial statements in the previous financial year. We are continuing to engage our provincial treasury to assist us with the 30-day payment regulation. Areas that require strengthening, Chair, are more related to the persistent weaknesses in financial controls and transaction capturing. We have, as part of the reviews, mainly relating to the SIU reports, including some of the other reports, for that matter, been looking at as to how we can strengthen the transaction capturing. This one mainly relates, Chair, to the automation process that we have requested our provincial treasury to assist on, mainly relating to the open purchase orders, as well as the RLS01 and RLS02, so that we are able to ensure that the service that is being provided has been released and then delegated to the right personnel. In terms of the way forward, Chair, we are just indicating that we will continue in terms of clearly outlining some of our roles and deliverables as part of the collaboration going forward with the provincial treasury. Under supply chain, we are continuing as part of the issues around the effectiveness and areas of strengthening. Mainly this will relate to the procurement transactions, including some of the detection and resolution of non-compliance. As and when we are visiting our facilities, Chair, we are able to ensure that and guide the colleagues in terms of the budget planning and expenditure control. So the areas of strengthening in this regard will relate mainly to the capacity building programs for district level SCM practitioners. We have, as part of this, seen treasurer assisting majority of our SCM practitioners in terms of the training, those mainly within the NQF level 5. At high level, under the internal control, this is what is working versus the gaps at this stage. The issues around the budget adjustment, we have seen visibility in terms of commitments and stronger guidance on the deviations on condonation. I think of importance around the gaps, Chair, remain the persistent accrual pressures within the department, where we are as part of the value around the legacy contract management issues, and then inconsistent stock controls across facilities. As part of this, we are monitoring on a monthly and quarterly basis around the stock control at different facilities. The issues, Chair, that also require strengthening for the period in the medium to the long term, mainly those related to the targeted capacity placement. As part of this, we have looked into the inventory control, which at this stage pose as a high risk at different facilities. Hence, we have requested our provincial treasury in terms of automation. We have, as part of this, looked into tightening some of the consequence management, mainly that will be expressed within the service level agreement that we have had with the different suppliers. We are at this stage finalizing the irregular expenditure in terms of the timelines and investigation turnaround time, where we have to identify and then input the consequence management to those that will have been identified. Lessons learned, Chair, within the budget management is more relating to the standardized templates and consistent reporting to improve quality data. We have, as part of this, looked at also differing the issues around the accruals and compensation pressures more effectively. Treasury is assisting us on a monthly basis in terms of identifying the challenges around accruals, including the headcounts within the department. There is, as part of this, again, continuously so around the revenue enhancement. We are appreciative, Chair, of the allocation that has been made to the department towards the revenue enhancement strategy. Around the SCM, Chair, we are looking mainly around the continuous building on the capacity within the SCM that is led by Provincial Treasury, so that we are able to identify and intervene immediately on some of the challenges that we might have had. Around supply chain, Chair, just at high level, this is the lessons learned and best practices. As part of ongoing controls, we have looked into the centralized oversight. We have looked into the consignment stock in particular, as we have indicated, remains a challenge within the department. We have also looked into the data-driven management, mainly around the open purchase orders, where we have to delete them immediately once they exceed the more than 2 months. Internal control, what we have learned, mainly this relates to the issues on the coaching, including the development of the standard operating procedures. We have also looked into the issues around the chart of accounts that were implemented at the beginning of the financial year, and we're continuously monitoring them so that they are aligned overall to the health sector. Of importance around the key risks and dependencies, Chair, there is also challenges around the staff turnover within the SCM. We have had a circular where the SCM officials will need an approval from the Provincial Treasury before such posts could be filled. There is also challenges around the delayed investigations and condemnations decisions that also prolong our departmental irregular expenditure. But we have, as part of the engagement with the Provincial Treasury, requested that such condonation decisions, if they can be made timeously so. In the next 90 days, Chair, we are, as part of the discussions in the opening remarks, continue with the baseline around the audit action plan, mainly with the timelines that we need to adhere to. There is also issues around the IYM and accruals dashboard that we discussed with our Provincial Treasury. That is also one of the engagements that we have had with the Provincial Accountant General, mainly to assist us in that regard. Then in conclusion, Chair, we are indicating and requesting that we should continue strengthening our collaboration with the Provincial Treasury. We are also, as part of this, ensuring that we'll need to strengthen issues around the elimination of the irregular expenditure, and then we have put in place some of the sound SCM practices, mainly relating to the policies and SOPs that we have developed, Chair. Maybe let me pause there, Chair, and then we'll request your guidance further.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I want to allow members to also engage on the presentation. Member Mohobe, Member Sidinyani, Member Clam, did you? Yes, okay, then I'll conclude, thanks.
Thanks, Chair. I think the presentation speaks about bringing about tighter plans for consequence management. Meaningly, the department clearly says that to us, there are no systems in place as yet, or it does not know people yet who have been found responsible, and of course, who are a flight risk, and of course, they need to be attended to immediately. And of course, it is more softer in saying we're putting more tighter, meaning there were no systems in place already to at least have consequence management when people have participated into wasteful and fruitless expenditure. For me, it would be that the department must ensure that it acts quicker, because also it's found, the department is found on the news most of the time on wrong reasons. So it would mean that anyone can do anything and there will be no consequence management in the department. In fact, from time to time, we'll then be hearing that no, we're still trying to put stricter measures with all the troubles the department finds itself in. And of course, just to get an understanding of the irregular and wasteful expenditure, how much has been recovered or written off? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I may, this one, Chair, I may not necessarily talk to the presentation as yet. I know that you would have raised this issue earlier on your opening, but I thought it's important that I raise this sharply in this session. Because this is almost same thing that is repeatedly happening, especially when we are calling a session like this for department to come and account on some of this particular work, because it is our responsibility to play an oversight. And I'm raising this issue, Chair, because it's always difficult to do our work without political hits. And it's becoming a norm. I remember the last time I was chairing, and I can confirm the only MEC that attended is the first MEC that left. She's the only one that attended. All these other MECs are not coming here. They are not responding, they are undermining the work that we're doing. And I don't think it's proper that we must just accept that. And there may be excuses that they are bringing, but their excuses are not above the work that we're doing. What you can tell you is that this MEC, whilst we're busy here, they are busy with a limelight exercise. A limelight exercise of cutting ribbons when there's expected to come and account here in this committee. And I'm raising this, Chair, sharply so that the committee must ultimately take a view that we will not accept this kind of presentation without the political hits. We must take a very harsh decision and request that this committees without, this department without their political hit, we cannot keep on entertaining and dealing with it, because that is a serious, biggest challenge. And I'm raising this because in health, we didn't get last time the MEC. With education, it's even worse. All the committees it's not there. And it's a problem, that thing. It's extremely problem, and we must extremely continue to raise these issues, and it becomes very difficult. I thought, Chair, stop to be soft equally, just be firm, so that we're able to make sure that these people are here to account. It is their responsibility. They are not employed to cut ribbons and open things. They must come and account here.
Thanks, Member Signani. Member Klaver?
Thank you, Chair. Yesterday, we had a very detailed and very informative session in terms of addressing the issue of accruals and how they affect the department's budget, hence affecting service delivery. And I see there is an accrual reduction plan or strategy by the department. Can maybe the department share a written summary of the accrual reduction plan, including annual targets and measures? I think this will put the committee at ease that there is a plan or a strategy to address the pending issue of accruals. We can also use that plan as a monitoring tool to track progress and not wait for AGA's findings at the end of the year. There was also a mention of having engagements with the Treasury. I just wanted to find out that has the department consider engaging Provincial Treasury to review and possibly reallocate funds within the MTEF to address historic accruals? And lastly, Chair, on the key risks, the staff turnover affecting control continuity in supply chain management. It is important for the department to work on building and retaining capacity so that there is process continuity and avoidance of the loss of institutional knowledge. I thought I need to raise that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, members, for the questions that you've posed, your comments, as well are taken seriously. I want to also reiterate, I think when we started, members said we were still delayed. We did mention and we took a resolution that we are going to write to the Chair of Chairs and the Speaker, raising concerns about the MECs that are not honoring. And we are hoping that at least with that intervention, things will improve. But yes, members are of the view that we should no longer accept the presentation, but I thought that will be the last, the last step. So we are not being soft, it's just to allow maybe processes to take place. That's where we are, but yes, if officials must go back and communicate the same. That's how serious the committee is taking this. But I want to also welcome the presentation. At least it was addressing the issues that we have, and if we do have follow-up questions, we will also send for a written response. Member Klava indicated that yesterday we started with an FIS on the medical legal accruals. And it's because we really want, because we've seen the severity of what it does on the fiscus. And we want to, as a committee, to also, when we're doing our oversight, we want to also show that support to the department. That is why we have undertaken that. In fact, we had invited the chairperson of health. He could not come, but it was due on our side. The invitation was delayed, but he was also traveling. So we understand that. But fortunately, there are members who serve on the Department of Health who felt that it's important that they invite the same people and maybe request that, it goes to the portfolio of health. So we are also wary that we did not want to have an overreach. That is why we are just looking at the accruals. But the presentations were really broad, and I think they will be helpful if they also serve there. Because we had the Health Professional Council of South Africa. We also had the South African Law Reform Commission. We had the South African Medical Association and us. So I'm telling you, they had lots of recommendations. In fact, one of the weaknesses that we have also identified, that they identified, was that you do have a legal unit that looks at the accruals, but it doesn't seem to be a medical legal. So it means it must include all the other experts for you to be able to, to get to the bottom of this. But we don't want to be preventative in our approach, because you are still going to come back as the department to give us a presentation on what are your plans, and we'll provide you with those presentations after you have presented, so that we can see where you are. Maybe you have attended to these, we don't know, but I think it is really important. It's really just for us to, maybe at the end, we know that all of us would have contributed to leaving a legacy, at the end of this administration, that we would have assisted on how we deal with the matter. Now you've raising issues of, so for us really, the other accruals, yes, I think we have observed, but mostly it's the medical legal ones that are really a bottleneck. But the issue of the 30-day supplier payment compliance, it's really still an issue with the department. I really would want to urge, because sometimes we get inundated as members of this committee with people contacting us, because obviously the committee must have an oversight on these payments, that they've got payments that are over a year and all that, and we really don't want to end up having the one that have to now intervene. But we were really requesting that there be improvement. You have mentioned that, there is an improvement on the 67% improvement of, audit action plans. So at least keep to that and improve. So, and yes, we understand that the department's cash flow position is really a challenge. That is why you are working with GPT. And that is the reason why we have really convened you here, in as much as we are looking at the UIFWs, but how does the GPT give you support? Especially the internal audit and the audit committee, we want to be able to see what is the value. Because we can't be having all these, recurring plans. But because when we also started as this committee, there was a commitment from GPT, and the MEC was also there in that meeting, committing that they are going to give you support. So we want to be able to see whether there is an improvement and that is taking place or not, and so that we contribute. I don't have any question, but I would like you to respond to what the members have commented on. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, members, for the questions. Maybe just issues, but majority of them were comments. I think there was a question around whether there has been any person who was found in terms of the consequence management. Chair, we must mention one, that a number of those that were identified to have contributed to, or alleged to have contributed to the irregular expenditure at this stage, majority of them have left the employ of the department, but we are pursuing such through the law enforcement agencies so that at least we are able to hold them accountable. I think it's important that part is expressed in that regard, Chair. In terms of the issues around as to how much has been recovered, we have not recovered any amount, Chair, in terms of the irregular expenditure that has been incurred, because majority of those, like we have indicated, have also left the employer of the department, but we are pursuing through the other law enforcement agencies. I think again of importance, Chair, is that for the previous financial year, our regular expenditure decreased from the 2.7 to 1.5. Majority of those related mainly to the issues around the consignment stock. We have put some measures, including the SOPs, as well as the provision of the contracts that we needed to enter into so that we can limit majority of our irregular expenditure. Chair, maybe let me allow the other colleagues to contribute, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to touch base on the issues of accruals. Our accruals is a thorny issue. The challenge that we have is the issue of financial constraints, which affected our 30 days payment compliance. Even from the previous financial year, the 30 days percentage was very low, but in the current financial year, we've improved. As my colleague said now, is that has improved from 0% the beginning of the financial year up to 83% currently. But we are trying, as much as it's difficult from our side, due to the challenges that we have, and also the payment of the accruals. Currently, we are sitting at the date of 2.2 billion. We had an opening balance of 8 billion, and then we've made the about 4 point something a billion onto the accruals. I think those are just one question that I was supposed to respond to. The others were just comments. I'm not sure if I'm leaving any question, Chairperson. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Would you like to have a closing remark?
Thank you, Chair. Just in closing to say, one, We take note of the request to submit the written response on the accrual strategy. We'll do so, including the targets as well as the extent of the assistance from the Provincial Treasury. We'll provide that information. And we'd like to thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for responding to the questions and your commitment. We are now going to continue with the other departments, but you may stay or you may also leave. We have lunch. They will show you where lunch is. But thank you. So let's continue, members and officials, on the next department. I'm sure you've also heard the members of, the concerns from the members of the Portfolio Committee that must be communicated to the MEC. But you can continue with the presentation, just introduce the team and take us through the presentation. But maybe before that, just to confirm that the provincial audit outcomes for the 2024 25 revealed that the department incurred 1.4 billion in irregular expenditure. Yeah, okay. But we have given you a task in terms of presenting to us the scope and nature of financial and technical support. And if you can maybe have a discussion outside. Thank you so much. Yes, it's a bit disturbing. Provided by the Provincial Treasury to the Provincial Department. The examples of the targeted interventions or partnerships that have yielded improvements in the budgeting, expenditure management or audit outcomes. Coordination mechanisms between the Department and Provincial Treasury, including any joint planning or monitoring forums. The Department's view on the effectiveness of such support in areas that require strengthening, and any lessons learned or best practices that could inform a future collaboration across sectors. Please go ahead, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and honorable members. Chair, my name is Ompitletsi Mafora. I am substantively the acting CFO of the department, but in the meanwhile, I'm acting HOD of the department. I'm going to ask my colleagues just to quickly introduce themselves. Then I will do a preamble, then the acting Chief Financial Officer will be able to take us through the presentation.
Good morning, Chair and members. Good afternoon. My name is Sinat Mirazi and I'm the acting DDG Planning.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Anand Gaunda. I'm the acting CFO for the department.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, we have indeed prepared a presentation, and I think the colleagues will put it up shortly, Chair, in response to the letter that we have and the invitation that we have received from yourselves. Chair, just to give a bit of a preamble, in the 2024-2025 financial year, we have received an unqualified audit opinion as expressed by the Auditor General, with the 1.4 billion rand irregular expenditure being what has taken the two previous clean audits that we have achieved in the department. And Chair, just to give a bit of information, the 1.4 billion rand is an increase of our in-year irregular expenditure from 700, just plus 700 million rands in the previous year to the 1.4 billion in this current year. Mainly the two areas that we had challenges is the area of school safety and also the area of infrastructure. Part of it being the provision of mobile classrooms and mobile toilets that we do in our schools. We have, Chair, a collaborative engagements with our provincial treasury when it comes to matters of irregular expenditure. Mainly, and I think the presentation will touch on that, part of what might be the challenge to start on that note is the issue of the delays or the slowness of condonement of irregular expenditure, especially subsequent to the investigations where we would have done investigations. To a large extent, the Provincial Treasury Committee for Condonement will take time to do the condonements of this irregular expenditure. And therefore you will see, as a result of that, the balance of the condone of the irregular expenditure on year on year continues to increase because of a non-condonement in that regard. We have no unauthorized expenditure, Chair. We have quite a small amount of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, largely as a result of court orders. That's when we will have those challenges there. Chair, we work to a large extent. We work well, and I would want to suggest that the relationship that we have with our provincial treasury is a cordial one, yet robust, because there are many factors that we need to really engage on. And one of the collaborative effort that we work with is in the area of infrastructure, where over time we would have had a number of our infrastructure projects that are delayed, but there has been some interventions, engagements with our provincial treasurer to assist us there, including Chair assisting us with engagements with our agencies such as DID to ensure that we accelerate delivery in those regards. We have a project that we are doing with the one of the entities of the provincial treasury, GIFA. We call it BFI, where we're building 18 schools across the province, and that project is going very well, with some of the schools being anticipated to be open by the end of this year, and quite a number being open before the end of the financial year. We have a Chair, as part of the work that we do with provincial treasury. We engage robustly on our budgetary processes through the MTEC and the MTEF processes. And maybe to this point, Chair, one of the challenges, and this is a challenge that would have developed towards the end of the previous financial year and continuing in this financial year, is really challenges around financial or budget challenges that we have, or resource limitations around the finances. This, Chair, has led to the accruals of the department increasing to 2.1 billion rand by the end of the financial year. We have a collaborative process with Treasury, where we are trying to make sure that we contain the accruals that we have. Part of the strategies that we're deploying is to renegotiate some of the contracts and the commitments that we have with the service providers, and just make sure that we stick within the limits of the contracts or the budgets that have been allocated to ourselves. Chair, as far as consequence management, and I'm just about to hand over to the CFO, in as far as consequence management, really the department has got strategies, or call them processes, to ensure that investigations where irregular expenditure has been identified are done expediently and concluded. And in most cases, depending on the severity of the cases, we put affected or implicated officials on suspensions pending the finalization of the investigations. And I think, Chair, in some cases where the investigations are finalized, really we do follow the recommendations of the outcome of any of the procedures that would have been there. And a case in point being the recent dismissals that would have been there in the department as a result of some of these these areas of our work. So I just wanted to give that preamble, Chair, but let me hand over to the CFO to give the brief presentation.
Thank you, CFO.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, HOD. The department, again, has a very large budget to manage, which to some extent is a challenge because it requires a lot of complex environment in terms of balancing the infrastructure, as well as the personnel expenditure, and importantly, the service delivery imperatives across more than 2,000 schools and education facilities. The department acknowledges the committee's concern regarding the irregular expenditure for the financial year as a result of the audit outcome. We, as a department, remain committed to addressing the root cause of these financial management weaknesses and strengthening compliance supported by ongoing collaboration with Provincial Treasury. Chair, I think, as you would know, that for the previous 2 financial years, we were able to obtain a clean audit. And I think that relationship with Treasury was critical to assist us. But as you can see, I think the AG obviously does not perform the exact same procedures every year. Depending on the nature of issues, which I'll try to go to in more detail, is where we are found wanting. I think if you go back some time, many years ago when the department was on disclaimers, it was the issue of documentation. And I think we've evolved to get controls in place so that the AG now has to start auditing documents and then interpreting either in terms of auditing standards, accounting standards, and SCM regulations as well. We were able to get that right, but as I said, it's not a consistent issue because just like us, as we plug in issues, the AG starts to look at additional risks. Okay, the scope of the presentation, we'll try to cover the issue of the nature of the provincial support for the department, as well as the mechanisms between the 2 departments in terms of coordination, and our views of the effectiveness of the support and some lessons learned and best practices going forward. As the HOD has mentioned, in terms of budget, the Treasury performs a very important role in providing us guidance in terms of the required documentation as well as processes to be followed to ensure compliance with the necessary statutory obligations to get the budget tabled. And I've mentioned cash flow allocation as a critical issue. It has been, in the current year, have been an impact, not necessarily so for the 24-25 financial year. The expenditure monitoring, we also get guidance from Provincial Treasury. The IYM monitoring does assist us. And again, HOD mentioned we had about 2 billion rand accruals. That 2 billion rand accruals had to be managed quite, I'll use the word strategically, within the department, because although it's 2 billion rand, it is a lot of money, but it was not material for the AG, hence they did not raise a finding on it. But we still believe that we need to improve that, and that's mainly because of certain budget restrictions as well as cash flow management on that issue. Financial controls, as I've said, they support us in terms of internal control designs and implementation on transversal systems. Over the years, this has drastically assisted the department to address previous audit findings to a point where the majority of the material findings is centered around supply chain processes. Procurement, in terms of procurement, the critical issues that they do support us is the issues of advertisement of bids, and then of course the issue of the condonation of irregular expenditure. We'll go on to a little bit on more detail later on. The audit improvement, and specifically the PAG's office, they do attend the meetings with the Auditor General, which is the steering committee, where they hear first-hand findings that are raised by the AG, and of course there is engagements with the PAG to assist in terms of resolving that. Should matters not be resolved, we then have the option of engaging on a technical level with the PAG by providing a request for a technical opinion, which then assists us either in resolving an AG matter or either accepting it depending on the Treasury's, the PAG's outcome on that. Capacity building, Treasury also assists in terms of training, which mainly covers issues of PFMA, supply chain, as well as accounting standards that has a direct impact on irregular expenditure. We've put in conditional grants as well, because there is support in terms of assisting to monitor and to ensure that the conditional grant is utilized for its intended purpose, as well as the procurement processes that relate around that. It should be noted that for the 24-25 financial year, there was no material non-compliance issues in terms of conditional grants itself. Internal audit plays a critical role in terms of the services that they perform to assist the department to identify potential risks and maybe potential findings prior to the arrival of the external audit. I think also, as much as it assists us, it also gives the AG a bit of a heads up in terms of where to look at in terms of the department's weaknesses. Audit committee, there are oversight meetings that's held quarterly, which addresses the usual issues of financial performance as well as actual performance, and addressing critical controls within the department, also guided by internal audit in terms of risks that may have been identified as well. Treasury also assists us in terms of there are engagements with National Treasury and the Department of Basic Education that requires certain processes to be discussed with our Provincial Treasury prior to submitting to those respective departments. As HOD has indicated, infrastructure delivery is quite a critical matter, and Treasury assists us in providing that pivotal role to ensure that oversight and guidance is provided throughout the project lifecycle. The main reason being that infrastructure has an impact over many financial years, not over 1 year. Therefore, the issue of oversight and guidance is critical. They also assist in terms of planning and prioritizing infrastructure projects, ensuring the alignment of objectives and available funds. Additionally, they also help in terms of technical advice on project appraisals, procurement and contract management to enhance efficiencies. They also assist in terms of monitoring the infrastructure projects to regular site visits and perform reviews identified by bottlenecks, and they're promoting adherence to financial management best practices and facilitating stakeholder collaboration. In terms of the mechanisms that are currently in place between the Gauteng Provincial Treasury and the department is your financial budget oversight, which is your IYM monitoring process to ensure that expenditure is aligned to budget to prevent unauthorized expenditure. Again, I will indicate there were, I think it was quite a number of years ago, the department did incur unauthorized expenditure. However, this process has assisted. I think we have not had it for a good number of years, unauthorized expenditure. So it has been assisting us to ensure that has helped us. Infrastructure, as I mentioned, there's quite continuous engagements to ensure that projects and finances are aligned and on track. The audit committee does play a role in terms of, I think, holding the department to account, and because the audit committee is made up of external members, it provides that objective oversight to ensure that the department is performing what's required. The Provincial CFO Forum, which occurs quarterly, which allows an opportunity for CFOs to engage and learn from each other, as well as if there's any new updates in terms of treasury regulations, etc. This forum also takes input from the Provincial Procurement SCM Forum, which allows for discussions in terms of technical issues, maybe changes as well in terms of regulations, which then departments can try to implement. Internal audit assists the department in terms of providing assessment of risks and how we can implement controls on that matter. Of course, that's on a continuous basis as needed. And then, of course, the engagements with National Treasury and DBE. The effective areas that are in place, as I mentioned, the financial disciplines and compliance awareness has assisted the department. There has been progress over the years to move from a disclaimer to sort of qualified reports, and now consistently receiving unqualified, and for the previous 2 financial years, a clean audit. Transversal systems, we are reliant on Treasury to ensure that those systems are up and running and available for processing of transactions. They also assist in terms of audit readiness and documentation based on internal audit reports. As I mentioned, the department no longer has issues in terms of insufficient audit evidence. It's just the quality and quantity and the actual content of those documents. There's always continued collaboration in terms of infrastructure expenditure that is ongoing. Chair, in terms of the areas of strength, and I think I'll come back to the issue of the audit outcome, I think the issue is that as much as we are engaging with Provincial Treasury, the guidance often results in re-audits from Treasury rather than providing a technical clarity of your PFMA, SCMO accounting standards. As you're well aware that the AG has, if I can call it, technical experts in various sectors, and of course whatever we submit to the AG is being reviewed by technical experts. When we get feedback from GPT, I think that same opinion is then interrogated by technical experts to ensure that it's either right or wrong. And to a large extent, the matters that have resulted in irregular expenditure was of a technical nature in terms of interpretation of standards, as well as on a legal basis, is it correct or not? And of course, there comes a point when we are guided in terms of, do you continue to disagree or do you accept certain issues? And I think that's also where Treasury does guide us in terms of saying, this matter is a no-win, let's accept and move on. And then, of course, there are other matters where it's under assessment, and you will see that in the annual report, there are amounts disclosed as under assessment, which allows for further engagements after the audit. That goes on to the next point, where we're saying that an SCM technical advisory capacity would assist with compliance procurement classifications. And I think if one had to look at the previous 2 financial years, those discussions happened at a robust level with the AG as well as Treasury. In those situations, we were, I don't know if we were lucky, or we were able to demonstrate adequately in terms of why we did or did not do certain issues to ensure compliance with the respective SCM processes. And that goes further on. The discussions that we might have had in the past 2 years is not necessarily documented somewhere that can be used as a reference point going forward. We do have cases where the AG might raise an issue that was audited previously and accepted, but now is not accepted. Hence, a repository can assist that, and I think it's again a continuation of not necessarily relying on people, but processes should be adequate to provide that guidance. The financial data system is critical. Again, the volume of transactions is too large for it to be based, reliant on manual processes. If you look at financial statements, yes, we have a trial balance, but that has to then be converted from Excel and then captured manually to a large extent onto Word. And there are errors that are picked up on those issues, an example. But furthermore, in terms of the integration of, and I use the term BAS, SAP, and various systems for better audit readiness, it assists in terms of reducing human error. There are numerous reconciliations that are done to give the assurance to auditors, but there's always a risk of human error. Furthermore, in terms of procurement processes, your requisitions, which are ISO 1, and your GRVs, there is a process to automate it, but it is not there yet. Again, there's always a risk of errors in terms of quantities that are written on these documents manually. Internal audit, the procedures are substantive in nature and not controls-based. And I think an example would be for, if you look at where the AG might raise an issue that a document was not signed at the right time. It would be appreciated maybe if internal audit was not coming after the fact, but for example, attended the actual BEC evaluation process to see the discussions, to see the challenges that members have and how they responded to it. Because sometimes minutes can capture the decision, but not necessarily the difficulty of getting to that decision. And I think if internal audit were to start to look at controls, it will help the department get to the next level where controls are no longer just a plug and play, but it's addressing all issues and not just weaknesses identified previously, be it external or internal auditors. I think this is one of the biggest challenges we experienced in the last audit for the 24-25 issue, is that as much as there's engagements between the Treasury via audit steering committees and technical opinions, there seems to be an issue of checking whether the department was correct in terms of documentation, but not necessarily providing guidance in the technical interpretation of a standard or regulation or accounting standards required, and specifically supply chain. I think the challenge with supply chain is that as much as it's sitting on the CFO's responsibility, it's not truly a financial issue. It has elements of legal interpretations. And I think there's something that there's a gap, because as financial experts, we might be able to comply with that. But for example, I think there was a finding some years back where a document was not signed on one page, and the AG concluded that document is incomplete, therefore it's irregular. However, we know legal interpretations might say, was that an error, was it intentional, and therefore it should not have been considered that. And that comes back to the issue of a technical support center that can assist department. Proactive engagements prevent audit issues and compliance breaches. I think, again, if we had to look at the audit that we just passed through and to look at what resulted in those, but not as a department, but as a province, to look at consistencies, because an audit finding for GDE today might be an audit finding for health next year. But if you can start plugging those as a proactive process, I think it would reduce that. Integrate audit action plans that drive accountability. Audit action plans has played a critical role for the department to progress over the years to ensure that controls are implemented and tested either by internal audit as well as the oversight by the audit committee, and then of course the AG's audit where they come through and there is improvement in terms of audit outcomes. Continuous capacity building mitigates the risk of staff turnover. There is always a risk of change in personnel results sometimes in audit findings, because when there's a change in personnel, certain controls may or may not operate because it's not a proper documented process. But I think we need to build capacity to ensure that that does not happen going forward. Deployment of Treasury of Finance or SCM experts in the department can assist to resolve material findings and improve the control environment. I think Treasury might have certain expertise, but without knowledge of the business of the department, it becomes difficult for them to make a recommendation that is not theoretically correct, but also practically implementable, and it addresses both service delivery as well as the issue of oversight and external audit findings. As you can see, the above lessons are not specifically for the department, but I think it's for the provincial systems to address matters going forward. Way forward, it would be nice to implement automated financial monitoring dashboard. I think that will give management timeless indicators of risk and how one can try to impact that. And I think it should not just be, again, for a department, but something that's transversal that could assist various oversight committees that can. Strengthen the joint risk reviews with the GPT considering the statutory obligations of the department. I think, again, there is oversight and reviews being performed, but then there is still findings identified by the AG. And I think we need to strengthen that review process to try and address that. The SCM training for all officials, I think, is critical, but the training sometimes is theoretical and not necessarily able to give us practical solutions. For example, if a BEC member is not able to attend a meeting, how do we deal with that? If we don't, or if a member has to leave during the meeting, there was a quorum at the beginning, but not at the end. How do we deal with that? Because they'll tell you must have a quorum, but we're not sure how. And then, of course, AG says, but the person left, there was no quorum, therefore the decision may not be valid. The Audit Action Plan Task Team is the primary platform for technical engagements with GPT. However, I think we need to include, I used accounting interpretation specialists, and I think in this case specifically supply chain, to address or improve the quality of resolutions, because that committee can provide guidance on how to proactively address potential findings based on previous findings, but as well as trends in terms of the new regulations that does come out from National Treasury. A Provincial Technical Accounting and SCM Advisory Forum under GPT would assist in this regard. Improved internal audit planning to ensure audit plans are risk-based and focusing on the most significant risks to the department's objectives. I think this is critical because sometimes risks are a risk, we understand it, but we need to focus on stuff that is going to make a difference in terms of the control environment, considering the geographical risks that we face in terms of districts, and documentation processing, as well as volume of transactions that needs to come through. An example would this be where they might perform an issue of comparing suppliers that might have employees as members. However, that process just results in a list, but not evidence that we can use to then take it further in terms of consequence management for those officials. Chair, in conclusion, the GD appreciates the continued partnership with Provincial Treasury. They have assisted us to improve as financial management. Collaboration has contributed to measurable financial management improvements, and the department remains committed to clean administration, accountability, and effective steps for the use of public funds. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Acting HOD and your team for the presentation. I'm going to allow members to have inputs. Member Sidney, Member Kaba, and Member Moholi. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to make these comments, not be more of questions, Chair, but to seriously raise a serious concern, especially when the acting HOD and acting CFO says that from the previous financial year, the amount was around 7 point something million, which has tripled to 1.4 billion, which remains a serious concern. It's tripled. Now, if you look at the irregular expenditures that the AG would have spoken to, speaks about lack of competitive bidders. Further went on to talk about Kamina Kawena awarding of projects or tenders there in the department by some same familiar faces who may then be some working for the department and all of that. It further says the companies awarded would not have adequate requirements, for an example, on construction or appointment of mobile classrooms and toilets. There is no CIDB companies. And this is not the first time that the AG would have said, it said that in the last financial year. But you still have the very same panel, for an example, that you are still utilizing to procure the same classroom and mobile toilets, utilizing illegal people to procure from. The lack of appointment of contractors or competitive bidders in a form of securities, for an example, and including those in the nutrition. And all of these things, they happen, unfortunately, under your leadership, CFO. They happen under your leadership. And from 7 to 1.4 billion. Koromo wa bona hore maphodisa a tla a kokota e segale. Jwalo, Chair, I'm extremely raising this one in particular to say, if the department does not put its house in order, this department must be seriously be given a urgent and special attention. Urgent and special attention. So that we get to deal with these things, because I can tell you, some of these things is just a pure looting that is happening under your leadership and under your watch. That contract and tenders, for an example, will be advertised, but there's no appointment. If there's no appointment, it means it is intended that there must never be appointment, so that competitive bidders are appointed to be able to give these services. And in the absence of those, then it means we must do this kamena kawena according to friendship and all of that. And that is a serious problem that this department is seriously creating a biggest problem. And I can tell you, even the next financial year when the AG comes, you are likely that this may increase from 1.4 to 10 billion of wasteful expenditure, because there will not be any intentions of whatsoever. Maybe we must agree, Chair, that the CFO and the department should work out a plan and come back and tell us what is their plan and their intention to remedy and rectify this situation, and this matter must be arrested. Otherwise, the looting and collapsing of this department is imminent. It's just going to happen and under our watch. And as a committees that are responsible to provide this oversight, if we are not critical on these things that we see here, I can assure you we'll have a serious and extreme challenge. So I'm raising this ones, Chair, so that when we meet again in the next financial year and there's an audit report, don't say I did not warn you that this 1.4 billion, when we come, it will be 10.4 billion of wasteful expenditure, because there are no respect for laws and those that are governing to ensure that we procure and use precisely what is expected in terms of doing and utilizing these resources given to them. Maybe let me pause there, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Member Sidnyan, Member Kwaba, then Member Mkhobe.
Thank you, Chair. My question is going to be centered on what the Chair raised earlier on, the role of internal audits. We are looking at a regular expenditure of 1.4 billion. And the question is, did the internal audit flag these risks before they occurred? It seems like the department is more reactive rather than being proactive. And I think the risk-based approach, which will consider both control testing and procedures, should be considered by the department. And also, if this was flagged, what were the recommendations by the internal audit, and were those recommendations implemented? And if they were not, why? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Mkhobe.
Thank you, Chair. There's 1.4 billion matter. It's quite concerning that a chunk of it speaks to the school safety and infrastructure. I mean, in many oversights that I've been doing with other committees in schools, just yesterday I was in Suncrest, in the Val. There's an incompetent contractor appointed there. Nearly collapsed the school infrastructure that was existing. And of course, the school has been trying to speak to the department for almost 2 years now to try and resolve some of the issues. And then students are, as we speak in that school, they don't have proper sanitation. And of course, certain classrooms that were supposed to be there, they are not finished because of incompetent contractors that are appointed. And then when you speak to school safety, you then are speaking about a ticking time bomb, because really when you go around public schools, you don't get a sense of the money that the department is spending to protect our children. In fact, you'll end up with community policing forums and other volunteers in communities taking responsibility to try and safeguard children. Yet we're spending so much on school safety. And then with all these things, we speak less on consequence management. No commitment. And we believe that there's no intention to try and resolve some of these things, because if the AG yearly will then report mainly on some of these issues, then the next financial year you get an increase of the problems. Then we're speaking to a crisis. So I think we need to do something. This is an alarm that we need to be able to focus on. And of course, this is a critical department that speaks to, of course, educating our young people in this particular province. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, members, for those inputs. I think the officials can see why it's really important that your political head or principal is really here, because we really need them to account. But as the committee, we are not going to tire. We are going to follow up, with written questions that you would not have been able to respond to. But there is really a concern, and I think we have undertaken as the committee that we are going to heed the call of the AG, that there are compliance issues that the AG looks into, but also the issue of the impact of non-compliance on service delivery, which is what we are all about, and also your performance, whether it is aligned to that. We've got a budget, but is it aligned? And at the end, does it yield the result that we would want it to be? So we are definitely also going to convene through the GPT, the internal audit unit, and I'm not sure, but we will be advised on the audit committee, so to understand what is the value, what is the monitoring plan, because they must be able to come and indicate to the committee what is it that they have advised you as a department, and so that we are going to follow up and monitor. I think it's important. It is regrettable, really, for this department to have regressed after so many years. I don't think we're taking it lightly as the members of the provincial legislature. It's something that needs to be taken seriously and attended to. The department needs to go back to its glory, and I'm sure you'll be able to respond to the comments and the questions that the members have also raised. The issue of documentation, inconsistencies, it's a concern. We can't have that. We understand that there is no HOD now, but you have been in the department, and because you are tasked to come and present so you must be able to respond in action. Thank you.
No, Chair, thank you very much, Chair, to you and the honorable members. Chair, I think maybe let's note some of the inputs, but also note the concerns, Chair, and the seriousness that the portfolio committee has raised those concerns, especially as it relates to the regression in terms of our audit performance. And Chair, we do not take it lightly. We take it in the serious light that the members are raising. Chair, maybe just to touch on some of the issues that the members that are raising, Chair, indeed, I think the issue of irregular expenditure, it's undesirable at all levels. And we do have controls in place. I think one of the things that really occupies our time is to ensure that there is non-compliance that is incurred in the area of supply chain in our department. And Chair, indeed, it is unfortunate, the area of school safety, that we had this issue of non-compliance in the area of school safety as it relates to the appointment of security service providers. Chair, just to indicate, Chair, one of the things, Chair, that we do, maybe to give comfort to the members, is that as soon as there is non-compliance that is identified, we immediately stop expenditure. Well, within the parameters of the contracts that are there. But we immediately take legal advice and we stop the bleeding with immediate effect, Chair. Part of what we have done is to stop the provision of security, private security provision in our schools. That has its own consequences, Chair. But we have been engaging with the Office of the Premier, and we have engaged with the community safety, our sister department, community safety, to assist us in that regard, as the members have raised that school safety is a growing concern across the province, and we take it in that serious light. So we have been engaging with the community safety department to raise and to try and engage to see to what extent can we be able to get assistance in that regard. You'll also recall, Chair, that last year, or the last financial year, the MEC spent a large portion of his time really having community engagements through school safety in Bezos to try and address these issues through engagements with our community. And it's really because it is a growing concern, and we take it in the serious light, and we continue to do so. So we do note the concern, Chair, but we also are taking action. There has been suspensions. The officials that were involved, especially in the area of community safety, those officials are under suspensions. We are currently dealing with disciplinary processes to try and address that issue. The issue, Chair, of the infrastructure area, Chair, it's one of the areas where there are technical, and I think in our presentations we've raised this quite sharply, that the issue of technical interpretations of standards, especially as it relates to supply chain management, that issue has come up between ourselves and our external auditors. And as a result of that, Chair, this issue is still under consideration by the Provincial Treasury. We're working with the Provincial Treasury in as far as the technical interpretation of some of the laws that relates to these matters. And I think, Chair, at the right point or moment, we should be able to provide additional information just to say what are the issues that were raised at a technical level, and that led us to be where we are as it relates to the mobile classrooms. It does not relate to the entire infrastructure portfolio, but is strictly restricted to the mobile to the delivery of mobile classrooms and toilets. Chair, the issue of internal control, and I think, Chair, in our presentation we did mention it to say part of it is really the fact that internal audit, which in the province were audited through gas, resides within the provincial treasury. So one of the areas that we raised in the presentation is this issue of the knowledge of the department. We spend quite a lot of time engaging with our internal auditors because of filling the gap of the knowledge of the department. And some of the processes of internal control or internal audit, which are subsequent to the transactions, they audit subsequent to the transactions. And hence we mentioned in our presentation to say, as a way forward, what will assist is really for a more hands-on approach from internal audit processes, including at some point even forming part of our as we do the bid evaluations, as we do the bid specification preparations, that immediate review of the controls around these issues can assist us, Chair, such that we avoid a situation where we wait until we have the external auditors and then we try and deal with that issue. Chair, the document management within the department, and I think it's to the point that we're raising, we are seeing movements within the GPT that we're moving closer to automation of documentation, and I think it will improve going forward, but it is an issue, Chair. But for the department, it's not necessarily an issue that was a material issue for the audit, but it is, Chair, something that we have raised in our presentation to say a more automated system, or as we automate our financial system, we will have a better control environment going forward in our department. Chair, I think really we have tried to cover most of the inputs that were raised by honorable members. The issue of the school, this issue of incompetent contractors, Chair, and it's a collaborative effort. We might have to really, Chair, when we speak about construction and infrastructure delivery in the Department of Education, you can't talk about it without mentioning DID, because a big component of our infrastructure delivery is done through our implementing agents, and we will have to maybe have a look, and I think it will assist if maybe the member can just indicate to us the school as well, so that we immediately investigate what the issues are, Chair, and be able to attend to them. Chair, I can stop there and invite maybe some of my colleagues if they want to add, and then they can do so. You may go.
Thank you, Chair. I think just to voice our regret as well as a department on the transgression of the audit itself. And I think we, as the department as well, understand the need to really review our internal processes and controls within the department. And I think we welcome the opportunity to meet with internal audit. While, Chair, you have mentioned that we will focus on the finances, but I think in light of our performance information also regressing, that we would appreciate an opportunity with internal audit to really review the scope of the internal audit processes. Because as one of the problems that we would have had, it would have been around target setting. While I understand that it is our role, but the oversight role played from internal audit, noting that we had gone through all 4 audits and had been unable to pick that up, would just say that there's an opportunity for us to dig deeper in terms of how it is that we assess our performance information. I think that's just from a performance information point. And to to the CFO's point, from an infrastructure point, we do meet with GPT, and maybe just to say that we also appreciate the willingness from GPT to interrogate other models in terms of infrastructure delivery, looking at reviewing mainly the triple P policy to assist us to be able to deliver, noting that it would seem that infrastructure is really stagnant, and also the role of GPF in the delivery of infrastructure.
Thank you very much for the response and also for your presentation once more. We will make a follow-up. Member Mohobi.
Chair, thank you so much. I was going to collapse if I don't say this. Just, Chair, important to note in this committee that really we must take a deep dive into the internal control of the department. This is a department that it has been found that at least more than 100 of officials in that department are doing business with the state. And it can tell you that why do we have some of these problems. It's important to note that.
Thank you so much. I think, Member Mohobe, what I had actually just also engaged the coordinator now. We've just had two very important sessions from yesterday and today. And some of these resolutions and the observation that we're making, we will need to release a statement. I think the work of the committee currently, we do meet and do make impact on some, but we are slow in terms of releasing some of the statement, also put pressure on what we would like to happen, as this committee. So that statement needs to be released, at least on Monday, so that we start the week with emphasizing what the committee has resolved on. And yes, we really want to thank you once more. You will also relay the message to the MEC. It's important that the MEC makes and attends the committee meetings when required to. So yes, we want to thank you. We're going to move on to another department, so we will release you and you can join us for lunch. They will show you where we're going to have lunch. We want to conclude with the business of the day before we adjourn for lunch. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm told the restaurant is closing. Are we going to defer? Okay, just hold on. Let me wait for officials to go, and then we'll discuss now. Okay, we're going to defer. I think, yes, maybe just to mention, the Department of Infrastructure has submitted a presentation, but we won't be able to allow, we can't do it on their behalf, but we will invite them when the GPT presents information or presentation on the support that it provides to all the GPG departments. So we'll also invite them on that day. The next item then on the agenda is the resolution tracking, and I'm informed that May Faranani, who normally takes us through this, is now moving to Scopa. But we are going to defer that to the next, and I'm sure the researcher Mechilani will take us through that. And I'm going to be asking that and I always like him to take us through these other matters. 6 to 11, so that we adjourned formally.
Chair, like I reported yesterday, there are no provincial bills. However, we anticipate receiving the provincial adjustment appropriation bill. Neither do we have any NCOP bills, and then we are also expecting to receive the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill. And resolution striking, Chair has already spoken to it, that we are deferring it to the next meeting. There are no announcements, Chair. Neither is there any correspondence. The date of the next meeting, Chair, we will discuss it with Chair, because we have just realized that we have dealt with the GPG wide, and then actually calling other departments, it will just be a repetition, and then we just thought that maybe we should give members a breather in view of this congested program. However, we'll discuss same with Chair, but we may still have a virtual meeting maybe on Thursday, even though it's not our day in the afternoon, just to receive a presentation from SIU, and then we were also expecting a presentation from South African Medical Legal Association. They didn't give us a positive response. However, I'm still pursuing them. Should they actually indicate that they are willing to come on Thursday, those will be the only two presentations that we will have virtually. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. So the meeting will therefore come to an end. I'm requesting that maybe even the resolutions, then we just present, because it won't take long on the day, because when we have a virtual meeting, it won't take long. So it means next week there's no physical meeting.
No, there wouldn't be, Chair. And then, Chair, I was just going to request you that since Mr. Irregular is in the meeting, you can just regurgitate what you said regarding the media statement.
Mr. Irregular, the committee would want you to emphasize the resolutions, some of the observation we made in the past 2 days, because it was important, and the statement must be released on Monday. Thank you so much. The meeting is therefore adjourned. We want to thank all of you for your contribution, the work that you did, and colleagues and officials. We really do appreciate the work that you have, your inputs into the work of the committee and the arrangements in terms of the logistics. You must keep it up, and I want to thank all the members for their contribution as well. I think we have touched quite a lot in the past 2 days. Thank you. The meeting is officially adjourned. We are going to move to lunch. I'm told that they're going to close. That is why we ended up closing early. Thank you. You must travel back home safely.